So I'll call the meeting to order tonight, first thing at 7:01 p.m. As typical, we'll do a roll call vote attendance for people that are here. Start with Carrie. Carrie Early, Glenn Hoffman, present.
Present, sorry.
Cool, no problem. Mark Loring.
Here.
And Scott Tereshek.
Here.
And Sean O'Rourke here. And we're also joined tonight by Superintendent Peter Burrows. Thank you, sir. First thing on our agenda, well, second thing on the agenda is approval of past minutes. So I sent around the minutes from January 22nd meeting. Don't know if anybody has comments, updates, or anything in regards to that. I'm not hearing you.
Recording in progress.
It's all good, man.
I make a motion to approve meeting minutes for January 22nd. Second.
Second by Glenn. Perfect. Any comment, discussion? None. All right. Seeing we're all present, we don't need to do a roll call vote because I don't think anybody's online. Let me just double. Actually, there are some participants. So just make sure it's none of our folks. Scott, you're on there, but you're present. So yeah, we can just do a verbal. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I have to abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Third thing on the agenda is citizen speak. So, excuse me. We reserved the first 15 minutes of the, Mike's here. So I'm just going to promote him 1 second before I jump into that. To panelist. Just keep that up. And I'm not seeing, Mark, can you type in on that a name to join the meeting? It's all touchscreen. Thank you. Sorry, we're just adding the monitor in the room. Yep. Hey, Mike.
Could you just add my video? It says you're not allowing my video. Not that you need to see my face, but
yeah, make co-host. I think that will do it.
oh, there we go.
Right. This one, no, you can't.
The keyboard wasn't working for some reason, so I just went directly to the touchscreen and see if that jumps in. No audio. I think you just have phone call, I think, and then nothing so far. Okay, we'll deal with that just after citizens speak. So I apologize. Fourth thing on the agenda, Mark, can I grab my agenda back? Sorry, man. Third thing on the agenda is citizen speak. We reserve the first 15 minutes for citizens that want to speak. We ask that you raise your hand, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. So with that, I'll just keep an eye if there's anybody in the room or if there's any hand raised online. And not seeing any. All right. Mike, can we try, I'm trying to think of the best way to. Do you want to try to leave and come back in?
Leave?
Yeah, bottom right, red button. Think. That's the mic. Yeah.
No, it's that mic.
Yeah, mic's on.
Okay.
Yep. So the one other way is if this doesn't work, we could just use the HDMI for them to present, plug right in, and then they can still display on the Zoom so people at home can actually see it too. So a little bit of a backup plan. So see.
I was just gonna say.
So, sorry, Mark.
Yeah. Oh, it's.
Looks like it's stuck on that. Let me just try sharing my screen and see if it overwrites it, and then we'll jump right in. Sorry. So we can share. Stable network connection. All right. So what we'll do is we'll keep it open, but we'll just use the HMI to present for it. All right. So item 4 in the agenda, pull up is discussion and potential vote concerning whether and what form the school building committee shall avail itself the opportunity to submit on or before February 13th, 2024 at 12 p.m. deadline. Therefore, written testimony to the Massachusetts Legislature's Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government in connection with such joint committees hearing on S.2549, an act authorizing the town to use certain property for school purposes, of which the opportunity chair first became aware within 48 hours hearing notice meeting. So essentially the long-winded end of that is after posting this meeting, we became aware that there's a hearing being held for the land swap with a joint committee at the state. So what we're looking to do as a committee, what I submitted to everybody earlier, was kind of a statement from school building committee, basically in support of the land swap, which I'm pretty much sure everybody's in support of it. But as a committee, we, before we could actually issue something, I need to get it in front of all of you guys. So based on the letter I sent out earlier, Scott, I got your comments that you sent back. Just checking with anybody else in regards to review or anything like that, if there's any comments. And Mike, I don't know if you need to fill in anything additionally. Nope.
No, I think that captures it.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead. How are you? Oh, it's all good, man. So outside of some minor edits that Scott sent back, so I think the only thing we need to do remaining is to vote. So to do so, motion second, and then we move on.
Make a motion to approve the letter to be submitted.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. And now that Mike's joined remote, we got to do a roll call vote. So start, Glenn?
Yes.
Aqua?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Sean O'Rourke, yes, unanimous. Perfect. All right, item 5 on the is basically the meat of why we're here tonight. Designer Selection Committee. First on with us is Arrowstreet Architecture with us behind us. To make it easier, we're gonna kind of move back from the table, give them a little bit of space. We'll let you guys plug right in. Sure. Try that out, and then give them the floor for the first. How long does Shannon give?
About half an hour.
Half hour, perfect. Okay, so yeah, we're at 7:12 now, so please take your time, set up, vacate as best we can, and give you guys the floor.
So I think if we cover over here, you guys are over there. Okay. You should be able to see the screen as well. You want to take a photo? Yeah.
Larry, do you guys need to sit or anything, or you guys all gonna stand?
I think we're okay.
Okay.
Because we can sit on the other chair.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay.
I just need to sit up with the plug in.
Yeah. You sit there. I think the
I'm gonna make you a co-host right now, and if you get, she's gonna plug in the HDMI, but she'll still need to share her screen for people online. And what was your name again? Just so I can promote you.
Johnson, Jasin.
Got it. Oh, there we go. Yep, she's sharing. Listen, like,
filter it.
Yes.
so I think the one, you just need to share your screen.
No, I'm trying to see if they're gonna take the chair. Let's do one.
Let me try one. So, yep, 1 second. I'm gonna promote you as panelist. You just got to accept it. Yeah, cool. And then once you're promoted to panelist, there you go. Join as panelists.
Yeah.
There we go. Let me try one more. Sorry about that. Co-host. All right, that's good.
I'm gonna try to make sure this is.
Yeah, take your time, please. It's showing up fine on the Zoom, so we're good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
We're there.
Yeah,
We'll just wait for the power to go out now. We'll be all set.
I see the clock blinking behind me, so good evening, everyone. I'm Larry Stein, I'm one of the partners at Arrowstreet, and I run the school, the academic group at Arrowstreet, and very pleased to be here with you guys. I think what we'll do is we'll show you photographs and introduce the team because we're a little tight, but we wanted to bring essentially our entire group because we know this project wants to move quickly, and we wanted to show you the depth of our capabilities. So that will really ring through both the presentation, but also the folks you'll be hearing from. So we're going to be shuffling left and right, so hopefully that's not too distracting. But anyway, we're excited to be here to talk to you about the proposed new upper middle school and the pre-K program. We think it's a great opportunity to increase the capacity of your school system, but also to create a really interesting dynamic with the new education program, thinking of an upper middle school and the lower middle school. And we love the idea of working closely with you to think about what that might mean. So as principal in charge, I will be the project director with you throughout the project. And let me just go around, and I think we're almost in order. So.
I'm Katie Willock, and I'll be the project manager.
Kate, I am the director of sustainability and building performance, so that's what that sounds like, sustainability, resilience.
Tina Susan at Arrowstreet, and I will be project architect.
Everybody, Mike Pearl, educational planner with MATV Open.
I am Shnali Rajani, and one of the architects on the project.
Hi, everyone. Bob Michaud with MDM Transportation Consultants.
Dan Snyder from Arrowstreet, an architect.
Jade Cummings, landscape architect.
So again, we wanted to bring the core team, but also talk have our consultants here to talk about specific issues because we know there's an interesting side. We did appreciate the questions you sent. We're very interested in the site and then thinking through carefully how we can bring solutions to the problems to create really nice opportunities for the new school project going forward. We wanted to talk a little bit about the work we've done at Arrowstreet over the last 20 plus years. We do a lot of work for high performing, innovative schools, many of which have a multi-grade component. We'll show you some of those in a minute. And many of these projects, in particular, we've got a few that are charter schools. We're used to working on very tight schedules and very tight budgets. So we sort of came up through that. We've been working more recently with the MSBA, but as you'll see, we have a lot of experience working with projects that have multiple challenges. So starting with, although this is one of the large projects, King Open and Arrowstreet Upper Schools, this is a mixed-use project. It has a pre-K, preschool in with an elementary school, a middle school, and then beyond that, there's a public library, a parking garage, swimming pools, et cetera, district offices. And each of those has a different and unique entrance and identity. And so putting those all together, some of you have been over there, it's a really complicated building. And in this case, we put the middle school on top of the preschool. And so thinking through carefully how those two interface as they go is an important consideration, in addition to the sort of normal middle school and normal preschool activities.
So the Boardwalk campus is in Acton, and it is 3 schools combined, actually. It's 2 elementary schools and then a pre-K program. So the 2 elementary schools share this entrance that you see here, that's the Douglas and the Gates. And the pre-K has its own separate entry to the left. It has a designated drop-off, as well as its own play space. So with 3 schools under one roof, we have found ways to have a unified community within that. The learning commons, which you see in the bottom left corner, outdoor spaces there's a spine that leads out to a wetlands that we're going to show you a little bit later. That's all shared by all of the schools. And then we found ways to make a unique identity for each of the particular schools by using the wayfinding and sort of color schemes and the graphics that we have throughout the building.
And we recently completed a renovation of a former elementary school for the Newton Early Childhood Program. It's a fairly large program. I think there's 16 classrooms of 130 students. And the interesting part, when we began that, there was some consideration of whether to co-mingle or co-house the NECP, as it's called, with an elementary school. And we went through a very careful study with the district to understand and essentially to peel them apart and think that the preschool could be on its own. And sort of a preview for some thoughts we've had for Milton. But as you can see, a series of spaces that allow the students to come in. It's a half-day program, and it mingles students who have developmental challenges with students who are regularly developing in a way that brings along that population is the goal.
And the Brook High School in Mattapan, which is a high school with an 8th grade academy. We like to show this because I think it's a really good example of how to make a cost-effective building, but it also has an inspiring design. We used carefully selected cost-efficient materials. We looked at the structure of the building to make it as efficient as possible. Excellent. But we think that we also were able to maintain the dynamic design that's inside. You'll see the STEM lab there and some flexible spaces that are off of the cafeteria. So one of your questions was about whether or not there's an advantage to not engaging with the MSBA process. So what we have here is 2 different projects that we built. The Brook High School is on the top, and then the Hildreth Elementary School, which is in Harvard, Mass, is on the bottom. The Harvard project is the one with the MSBA, and Brook High School is not an MSBA project. So what you'll see is that the early design phases are a little bit more compressed. By not having to follow all the reports and check-ins that the MSBA requires, we are able to truncate the schedule, and that equates cost savings in the end. So what does that really mean for your schedule? We heard that there were a couple of key components to this. One is community buy-in. We started with, see the red dot there about in the middle of the town meeting. We're anticipating that's around October. So we've worked the schedule backwards from that, making sure that we have enough time to complete this design, feasibility, study the site, as well as having a few points of cost estimating to check the costs along the way. In order to have that town buy-in, have enough of a design to show the town and have the community embrace the project. Cost estimating, I think, is also one of your concerns, so baking in a few times there to check that. We're also suggesting that you engage a construction manager probably around the time of the town vote. They would help to expedite the process, perhaps even suggest a few early packages such as steel or site, perhaps even moving the road if that was part of that early site work. And then last but not least, you'll see the green bar at the bottom, the permitting. For this site is going to be pretty important. We have some setbacks and things that Jade is going to talk about when we get to the site portion. So this is just an attempt to show you how you could do it.
So for about the last decade, Arrowstreet has really been focusing on net zero energy buildings. So later it has across the Commonwealth, schools as well as other buildings. We've designed new construction schools, plus we've done existing alteration and renovation schools. A lot of them are also not the schools, but a lot of our other projects are passive house, which is now also now starting to look at passive house for school projects that we're currently working on. And really, we dedicated our life to this pretty much for the last, for the last 10 years. And it's not, just because we're interested in energy and emissions, there's obviously those environmental impacts, but we find that this is not only the next slide, a cost savings on the construction side, cost saving on the operation side, but it also gives us lots of the components that we're looking for the indoor environment and air quality and the healthy environment that we want for our students. So most of those projects have been done for little to no increased cost. Today, I'll talk about in a minute. There's no increased cost on the construction side, even in the past we were, but we saw a really great return on investment. We've been recognized internationally by Build Magazine for our work, not only in schools, but other net zero projects as well, as a leader in basically really trying to hone in on net zero as a way to get healthy, sustainable buildings at low cost with typical construction methods. And that's really been sort of our sort of sweet sauce of how we've been able to make this be typical in all of our school projects. So in terms of the indoor environment, there's lots of aspects that are synergistic between a net zero energy building and a healthy indoor environment. Things like bringing in natural light and daylight, views to the outside. That really helps applicants and students and teachers to be able to learn and to teach in that space. It also helps to save energy use, right? So there's these synergies between that. Indoor air quality is one of the biggest benefits that you get, because you're getting all that great indoor air quality, which also comes with great acoustics and thermal comfort, and you're able to pair that with net zero energy to see all those cost savings on the operations side. There are other components to the indoor environment that aren't explicitly regulated in net zero building, and one of those two key areas is healthy materials. So we've been doing this again for 10 plus years, really focusing on classifications of toxic materials, making sure we're meeting those material selections that we use on all of our school projects. And really, this is where it's all about, right? There's cost and construction and making sure we understand the cost of operating this building and sustainable forward to the people who are operating it. And through the construction and design process, we're really thinking about budget control. How can we make sure that all of the systems that we're doing are giving you that highest performing building, healthiest building, but making sure that you're staying on track. And as I mentioned earlier, in the past, it was all about what was the return on investment. We knew that a net zero building was going to save you lots of money in operations, but the construction costs might actually be higher. So it was like, is it a 5-year payback? What's that payback? The whole conversation has changed. There is no payback. It's instant, because the construction costs of the net zero systems that we're going to put into a building, the heat pump systems, are going to be less day one. So we have MassSafe to thank for that, and then this programs, but also the Inflation Reduction Act. So it's huge amounts of money. People don't believe me when I talk about this to clients all the time. They're like, that can't be true. Like, I get to put this great system in. It's going to give me great energy savings, low cost, great air quality, and it's going to be the cheapest system I can choose. And the answer is yes. Like, this is real. And so that's something we've been working with for the last really year that this has been hosted. So that's something that is just making it even more in terms of making the decision to do this, makes it even more beneficial.
So you also asked about, how we apply educational planning to really look into the whole great reconfiguration and kind of reimagining middle school, which I particularly love that you asked about that, because not only am I an educational planner, but the first career I had was a middle school teacher for 20 years. So this is really my sweet spot, and I'm excited to kind of dig into this with you. Being an educator and an educational planner, my process with you and with the design team looks like this. We study each component of education and we look at their intersection points. So we start with the learner. Yes, this is a 7th and 8th grade upper middle school, but in reality, I think it's still important to look at it more holistically, even district-wide. So from 5 to 8, what are the developmental needs, academic, social, emotional, physical needs of kids? And then what does teaching and learning look like? How does child development inform teaching and learning? How does teaching, learning, and child development inform the learning environment? When we look at those 4 components separately and then integrated together, it really gives us this educational vision that is then going to shape what the building needs to be. So how do we do that? We start reimagining with an observation and immersion process. I was a teacher who had a windowless classroom for years. And so if I started this process, I wouldn't necessarily even know where to begin to imagine what could be. And so we kind of front load and help teachers have the capacity to do that by taking them on tours to see brand new buildings or renovated buildings. We also take teachers to see programs that are kind of just innovative. Like, I worked with Canton at the Galvin Middle School. We went to New View Studio in Cambridge to see what project-based learning was, and then really talked about it and how in a public school setting we might implement it. And then also, the design team and I, we spend days observing your existing schools, understanding special education programs, your REACH program, other programs, and how they work with each other and how we support them in any new or renovated building.
As I had mentioned, he had worked at the school that was looking for innovative spaces. Benjamin Franklin here, which is pictured on the left part of the middle and the right, is an example of the learning lab where it was important for them to have technology in that space, as well as being able to provide to meet their educational programming. So this is an example of where you might be able to see some of these spaces as you do the school tours and see how that might fit into, for instance, your Fuse STEM program that you currently runs with the Milton schools.
So once teachers are positioned and community are positioned really to imagine what could be, then we start the visioning process. Again, as I said before, starting with middle school developmental needs, pre-K developmental needs, looking at explorations and reconfiguration, what are the impacts district-wide from 5 to 8, how can we support those different needs, then diving into high-quality teaching and learning, looking at things you're already trying to implement, and then how I can take those things in your strategic plan, and then work those into visioning sessions, and then ultimately talking specifically about space adjacencies, building features, and how your vision of teaching and learning supports the building.
And pictured here are some examples of those adjacencies and supports for the teachers, for the classrooms. Blackstone Valley Prep, that's an image of a breakout space or your sort of extended learning space beyond the classroom. And that's been tremendously helpful for this school, and they have a number of these located as part of their classroom neighborhood. Similar with Alma Del Mar, near at the top of the stairs, this was part of their classroom neighborhood where they have this sort of flexible extended learning space that they can use beyond their classroom.
And then we go even one step further, which I'm really excited about. This is where my biggest passion is digging deeper into the educational needs, looking at the specific programs like academic organization, for example. Like when I was working with Canton, they were bringing 5th grade into the middle school. So we had conversations, is middle school going with a team-based model? Or are they rotating with 4 teachers per team? Or is it, are we building that capacity for them and kind of scaffolding that? We would have those same type of conversations with you, looking at specials offerings and schedule. Let's completely use this opportunity to create a brand new DNA. 7th and 8th grade could be a completely different animal to get kids ready for high school. And so I'm excited to kind of look into that with you.
And within these workshops, this is where we really want to roll up our sleeves so that you can really understand what your educational program is and what your needs and goals are and how that might align with the architecture. Kate had mentioned the Boardwalk campus where that has the preschool component as part of the elementary school. So similar here, we want to look closely at that. And so it's middle school and preschool and how those synergies could work together. As early learners, we had mentioned finding joy is in learning. We want that to occur at all ages, but especially starting at a young age, so just preschool. Designing spaces is what we really want to look at when we want to see how we might be able to activate creativity and curiosity and how students at that young age can really thrive and grow, but also having varied spaces so that students can really stretch their mind, stretch their bodies.
We want to engage the middle school student as well. Not only looking at, obviously you can see those developmental traits there, but then engaging them in this process as well. Because I feel like my middle schoolers have no problems telling it exactly like it is and what they needed, because they truly are the biggest advocates for themselves. And so these are 2 examples of work with different sessions, either just having student-specific sessions or bringing students in these cross-generational experiences. I can't even tell you, this girl literally controlled this whole situation and had all of these folks captivated, really explaining from a perspective of being a multilingual learner, like how her needs weren't being met and things that we could integrate into the program to change her experience, which was, I get emotional talking about it, it was amazing. Right, next. And then one thing about social emotional learning, research tells us that we can put educational structures and spatial structures in place to really elevate kids, support them where they are needed to then allow them to blossom and academically. Things like giving them personal control. Imagine having multiple cafeteria experiences where kids don't have to necessarily eat in one big environment, but they can kind of choose to have a quieter space, or creating meaning and identity and building a sense of community through space to allow them to learn the best they can.
And Arrowstreet has the experience and understanding of how we might be able to design those spaces. so that students find the quiet zone when they need it, so that they can move at their own pace, but also be able to find easily support when they need it throughout the building. And you had a question about transportation or traffic. I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina. So this is part of a multidisciplinary team. Our job is to really understand the transportation network that's serving the school, what the underlying issues, concerns might be, particularly in a neighborhood setting. And also to understand and to help plan the internal operations, the circulation aspects, and the safety aspects of how the campus itself will function. We know that there's general proximity between Pierce School and high school, that they jointly rely on a public bus schedule, 12 routes. We think that there can be efficiencies and enhancements to how that relationship works, given the closer relationship of the new school to the high school. We know that these facilities are served by arterial roadways, but we also have the added benefit of having access directly along Blue Hills Avenue that provides flexibility in how access and circulation will work without putting undue emphasis on the need to use Canton Avenue exclusively for that purpose. My firm has a lot of experience in Milton, in this neighborhood in particular. We've been doing planning work here since 2016. We've conducted transportation studies of this neighborhood 2019 through 2022. We have a really good firm understanding of what transportation issues exist and where plans can be improved to ensure the success of the school. We know that construction management and construction-related processes are also a concern to the neighborhood. We have direct experience in helping develop construction management plans along Canton Avenue. This is an example of what would be produced during the process to ensure that truck routes are carefully considered, that restrictions are in place, that time of day operations are sensitive to school operations and restricting the use of certain roads during certain hours that might be more sensitive in terms of traffic flow and safety. So with that, I'll hand it to Jade.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
So as we turn our sights to your site, let's just take a moment and really appreciate what a treasure trove of natural resources you have. When we first came to this project, this is the type of project where I think I wish every child had access to this type of property. You have open space, your woodlands, your wetlands, you have rare habitat species, you have a connection to a greenway. So as we were looking at these resources, we started to put together this early diagram because you go out and you think, oh, look at the space, and then you start to look at the buffers and the setbacks and the easements. And so we started to put together to understand the build zones. And when we were looking at this diagram, it brought us back to a project that we've worked on and we discussed tonight, which was our project in Acton Boxborough, where we had 3 schools in 2 landscapes. So of course we got out there and it was just like, we have gobs of space to work with. We can't wait to build it up. And then we did a similar build zone diagram. And suddenly it's like, oh, are we going to be able to fit a playground in here? But what ended up happening was what could have initially appeared or been treated as a constraint, all these resources, they were nothing but an opportunity and completely informed the design because it really allowed us to have very creative and focused design thinking, which resulted in thoughtful outdoor classrooms, dining, gatherings, signage, these educational components all set within this really just rich, this beautiful environment. So one last thing that I would say about landscape, I think everybody in this room understands our kids nowadays on average spend 90% of their time indoors, almost 50 hours a week in front of a screen. So our work is rooted in the latest research because we cannot overlook the updates that are forthcoming with regard to the impact that exposure to outdoor play and nature has on our children, which is why I'm so happy to be working with this team because at the end of the project in Acton, the town chose to refer to this campus as the Boardwalk campus, which says to me that we have proven that at the end of the day, we will deliver a project that integrates
your program, your curriculum, your buildings, and your landscape, which we can't wait to see us with. So thank you. I'll hand it over to Dan.
And so we got together and started to think about a couple of ways in which we could apply some of these principles regarding site building layout to this particular project. And so we have an adjacency diagram here that shows, you can see what is basically a predominantly north-south axis that is roughly parallel to the contours on the site. And we feel that this is the most logical way that we could probably lay out a building on this site. And go to the next slide, please. That's how that could possibly organize itself with a building that reacts to the existing site constraints in a way that is economical and efficient and minimizes the disturbance to the site. And so what you see here basically is we have some possibility for classroom wings with nodes that exist where the building changes direction with the contours, and those nodes could be learning nodes and have some breakout spaces or public learning spaces similar to some of the stuff that Tina was showing you earlier, those images from previous projects that we've worked on. And in this scenario, each one of these neighborhoods, including a gym and cafeteria, could be a destination.
So as Dan described the plan, we also started to try to create a strategy of the site in a massing form. And as you can see here, we've started to think about the approach to the building and what is the scale of the building on the site. And to the left is what we're calling the middle school part of the classroom, that there'll be classrooms on the first level, a mixed media, additional learning, specialized learning spaces on the second floor, and then the top floor, your traditional classrooms again, and those students can meet in the middle so that there's some opportunity to connect them with these specialized learning spaces. And here, one thing I really wanted to touch on was, as Dan was describing these learning areas, it goes back to what Katie was saying with the Brook High School. The traditional learning classrooms can be this typical rectangular buildings that are connected by specialized nodes. So you can get the efficiency of the construction with the traditional classroom sections, but then have these specialized areas that are really unique and can represent the special qualities of Milton. Can we just go back one, sorry, to the 1A. So right here, you can see the preschool that's flanking the drive as you come in. There's a separate entrance you can see on the right. So there's separated entrances for the middle school and the preschool. If we go to the next slide, we were thinking, well, we could push the preschool off. Like it can have its own identity, it can have its own separate sort of identity from the middle school, separate drop off. That also gains you construction efficiency, right? Like, so now we have these blocks that are typical learning areas with these unique nodes, but then the preschool being a one-story building, maybe it's a wood frame, it can be a different type, it's completely separate.
And so as we study that further, the additional scheme that we put together, shows this preschool building that is separate, and what we envision here is, it's a completely separate building, separate pickup and separate drop-off locations, which really allows it to have a different feel, a different scale, and different appearance, which Sonali will touch on in a minute. In this particular scheme, rather than having different wings with nodes, we kind of have one wing that has like a hub theme basically. And so you have your cafeteria and the gym sort of in the center, and you have one prominent hub in the center where everyone can come together and commingle. And in this particular scheme, we envision what the classroom areas could look like with sort of miniature hubs that have sped and breakout spaces within them as well.
So again, another strategy for the massing here, the approach really shows the difference between the middle school and the preschool. The preschool can have its own complete identity with its own separate parents drop off. And then the cafe and the gym in the center is slightly different scale than the 3-story learning wings. And so that draws your eye in, right? Like it brings you in. And so then if those spaces are used for other public activities like voting or some evening activities like a school building committee, everybody knows where to go. Their eyes completely drawn to that center, and it helps mitigate the scale of the overall campus. And again, this is like a turned approach. one of the important things about this is it again reiterates that sort of traditional construction of the classroom wings where you get that efficiency and then noted your special area.
So we wanted to wrap up talking about community engagement because we understand it's going to be a real critical part of this project. And we want to engage throughout the project, really, so that we're getting opinions from the community from the very start and working with you, the building committee, to get those opinions through and really develop a common understanding to build community support. So how do we do that? A couple of different thoughts. Using different mechanisms to allow people to speak as they're comfortable, whether it's a traditional stand up and present in front of a large group, smaller workshops, bringing the kids in, as Mike had mentioned, allowing folks to work with sort of pieces of the building or using social media, all of which are intended to get the different voices, different ways that people want to communicate and bring it back and then use that to develop the ideas further. In addition, as Mike had also mentioned, taking people out to the schools to look at it. In this case, the town of Harvard provided a bus and we were able to take out the community and look at different ways that the schools were being done so that people could understand it's not just the 1960s building anymore, that really the schools need to respond to that. And really the goal is to get support at town meeting. We know that's critical to the project's success. It's critical to giving the extra space to the district. And what we want to do is do it in a thoughtful and careful process that allows people to understand the project as it develops and feel they can support it from either the sense of a building on a new site, the cost of the building, or the reconfigured those. So all three things need to work together. So with that, as we say, let's start a journey. But we're finished our presentation and happy to answer the questions and give some comments and start a dialogue.
Perfect.
So thanks very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Great presentation. So right now I'll open up to anybody who has any questions, and if not, I can tee one off, but rather get some participation first.
I guess I was just curious in terms of the land and the site there, if there were any kind of challenges you foresaw with the kind of the model that you presented here, if there was anything that, that timeline was pretty tight, that projected timeline, and kind of what kinds of challenges you feel like based on your analysis you might have to work through.
Yeah, I think as Jay mentioned, I went out and walked the site, probably the coldest Sunday of the year so far. But it's a lovely site. I mean, it's beautiful. And I can appreciate the reverence people in town have for that piece of land, that piece of natural environment. And the goal really is saying, okay, can we get the new school to integrate with the landscape in a way that enhances it? But yes, there's all kinds of permitting efforts. We were showing 5 months. We think that sort of makes sense, but it may take longer. We'd love for it to be sort of kicked off at the right time when you know enough about the project to get people talking about it, and then finish in time so that when the town approves the project, you're ready to roll into the next round of effort. And yes, there's wetlands, there's a floodplain, there is a riverfront setback, there is a critical wetland, critical species, and all of those things are going to have to work together. So not going to be easy by any stretch.
Yeah.
In your presentation, there was a question about going with MSEA or going solo. Am I correct to say that for not going with MSEA, your cost was at $93,000 per square feet?
93,000 square feet, $33 million project.
And going with MSEA was
82,000 square feet and 42 million. And so the interesting part was we started that in 2016. Not quite similar, but I think they were 3 or 4 months apart. And we were basically loading the building with students high school in 2018. And that's when we were finishing up the schematic design for the Plymouth Elementary School. So, we understand the MSBA, they have a process to take a long time. We also understand for charter schools, they have a sort of singular decision-making process that can push things along quite quickly. I don't imagine that Milton has that sort of ability to make those decisions that quick, but maybe so. So we think it's somewhere in between, which was the schedule we suggested. We're really focusing on that front end piece to get you to town meeting and really to hopefully give you enough time to talk around the community and socialize the project so that people feel comfortable voting for it.
Your cost per price, did you take into consideration the benefits from MSBA, or that was the total cost?
That was total construction cost. And then I think the district got a 30%-ish reimbursement from the MSBA of that piece. And then their total project cost was more than 42 million, but we just compared construction costs.
So the benefits will be at somewhere around 40%.
I hesitate to put a number on it, but yeah, I mean, we got a bigger building for less money quicker.
I think the other piece I'm not pointing out, and I didn't specifically talk about it, we also showed the boardwalk campus project, which is a net zero energy project, net zero water. And that particular project was built at the same price as a typical MSBA elementary school. That's not net zero. So there's a lot more components into that project. And I think that's also another piece that with the charter school experience and our other public school experience and being able to combine those together and give you a much better building, right? Healthier building is net zero building or the same prices or less, like that is really where we've taken those two components and taking the best of both worlds and making them.
My last question. So you're saying the MSBA project was not net zero, that's right?
Not the one on the schedule, but the other one that I was talking about that was net zero energy, net zero water, that is an MSBA project. It was built at the same prices on our elementary MSBA projects, and we don't have those.
So just to follow up on schedules, so the part of the presentation talked about, observation, tours, visioning and stuff like that. The schedule that you presented basically had like an August, September kind of schematic design will be done. So between now and August, September, we would be doing all that visioning, all those tours and everything else. And would that be, what's up?
Even faster.
I appreciate that. And then, with that too, we advertise a fee right now because we're limited in funds for what we have, 475,000. Would that also be captured up till September? And if so,
yes.
Okay. And then, okay. All right.
Anybody else? On community engagement, you had a presentation there that showed the social media interaction. You had a website. I'm familiar with that website. I looked at some of your other projects and I looked at those project websites. Do you find yourselves in a position to be leading that effort, or is that, I would imagine that would be more in conjunction with our project management team as well as the CM, and the kind of same question applies to the CMP and TMP for traffic routes in and out. I imagine that that's something that you work on in collaboration with them, but disabuse me of that. If you were leading that effort, I'm interested.
No, I think it's a mutual effort in that particular instance. So yes, usually the OPM is initiating and maintaining the website. What we're doing is working with them in this case, helping them with information, working with them more on a strategic level. But yeah, no, we're not the folks who are actually doing that.
The format of the website that was up on the person's phone in your picture is the same format as a different project's website that I looked at. So I didn't know if that was like, I didn't know if that was like an Arrowstreet thing. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
May I ask one more question for transportation? It's my understanding that you worked in this neighborhood for a while.
Yes.
What's the biggest challenge you faced?
people have distinct experiences with traffic during certain hours of the day. And we know that Canton Avenue carries some 12,000 vehicles a day, a third of which are related to the high school. And the afternoon release in particular is very much in the forefront of discussion with a lot of the neighbors. Neighborhood cut through, Thatcher Street in particular. It came up in many conversations, the efficiencies of the signals and whether or not the operations along Canton Avenue could be improved to focus the vehicle flow on Canton Avenue rather than Thatcher Street or other cross-connecting streets. All of those came to bear. The lack of sidewalks, walkability, bikeability were topics of discussion and concern. Reedsdale Road to the north is a high crash location. It will be studied and a road safety audit will be prepared to identify safety improvements here. So that being a major gateway was another point of discussion. So it's really, what is the multimodal experience or lack thereof? What are the real conditions like during certain hours of the day, and can they be alleviated? And how do you avoid cut through traffic? Those are some of the common themes that we heard.
Right.
Go for it.
Were any of the projects that you shared here, or maybe different projects, ones where you were operating a construction site adjacent to an active school with, the traffic volume that's kind of raised here? And if so, like, how did you manage that? Or if not, what do y'all see as the complications or things you're thinking about?
So certainly the Boardwalk campus, which we were showing, there was actually two schools that got consolidated into one new building. And what we had to do was also build a building around one of the operating schools and then park people on the other side of that boardwalk. So the boardwalk actually was built quite early in the process. In that case, it was a lot of moving bits and pieces, and that's why we suggested getting CM on board quite early, because that's going to be critical to understanding the overall construction schedule, how we can make that work, and then also the moving parts and pieces of what is being happening. I do think the opportunity to sort of build that new road while we're still working on the drawings for the building could make some sense and hopefully minimize the impact of construction, because once you have the road built, if you can put a fence along it, and then everything sort of happens in that area to try and minimize it. And then, as Bob is mentioning, timing the contractors' deliveries and things so they're not really gumming things up during construction. I think that's true in many of our projects. Certainly the couple of MSTA projects we showed, the new building usually gets built right next to the old building, sometimes 20 feet apart, and then the old building gets swung down. And so figuring that construction logistics is part of the puzzle.
Is your construction administrator typically part of the design team, or do you have standalone CA people? That's what they do.
They're part of the team. Dan works on it, Katie works on it, Tina works on it. So when we think that's the strength of what we do is the people who start the project finish the project.
And do you think the 24-month construction schedule, do you think that's?
Yeah.
June's tight, that's why I'm asking. Like June construction is tough for a school.
What's more working is making sure that everything fits into place before that 24-month clock begins. But to answer your previous question, I would say there's nothing more rewarding than administrative construction.
I know you guys have done a lot of schools, and you know what substantial completion means to some people. And it's
Not necessarily when you would need to move in. That's why, we targeted on that date.
Okay. So you're comfortable with the June, they'll be good to go, move in August.
So one other, just from mine, electrical side coming out from my 9-to-5 job. So right now we're a stretch energy code town, and we're potentially at this May's town meeting doing the adopt-in portion of it, essentially pushing you to electrify the entire building. Is that essentially for you guys when you're talking net zero and stuff like that? One of the things that we're looking for, or that you're proposing as part of this?
Yeah, I think, Kate, you want to jump in?
I like to say I don't really flip it about.
No, don't.
I'm not worried about the code because we've been this for a decade, right? Like, we've been doing this, we've proven out like how we do this most efficiently, most cost effectively. So for us, like, new school buildings are already electrified, regardless of the code telling you have to do that.
So 30 days notice didn't affect too much. The 30 days notice they gave us.
So
Didn't affect too much.
I mean, I think we had lots of input on the new code, so it was something that I was very aware of what was coming. But I think what's been really nice is that piece that like, we don't expect to be designing the building that way, and now lots of people want to giving money to do it that way, so we can take advantage of the incentives.
So the utility distribution in the town, like not like downtown Boston or anything like that, everything's overhead wires. So, we're about to hit a 8-inch snowstorm tomorrow. So typically, what do you guys do for backup and stuff like that? Is it upsizing the entire generating system and stuff like that?
Would still be a diesel generator.
Correct.
There would be that combustion outside.
Mhm.
So we typically would do a battery. You have projects with batteries like the Fort campus, but the battery is not an emergency generation battery. It helps get more value out of your PV generation and more savings there, but it's not your emergency generation. It's still have it.
Yeah, but the size of that generator, not just doing life safety systems, now is also doing the ancillary systems, heat, stuff like that, right?
So, and we're going through that now with the net zero ready building that is using a VRF system. And so getting the heating, so it's freeze protection, jump the size of the generator, went from a 2 something to a 500 kW. What that's done is give us a little bit of heartburn with the neighbors. But yeah, that was a big jump because previously, and if you go with ground source heat pumps, again, you sort of have a low load on the generator. But once you say, oh, we've got all electric heat, then that's going to produce a load if you want to freeze protect the building.
Yeah, because I just get worried about it of like, if there's snow, stuff like that, school will be canceled, right? But following days, if electricity's out for multiple days, I just wouldn't want the school to be shut down because we don't have electricity there. We can't operate the school. That's just thinking out loud. One of the things that when I hear about electrified buildings, just comes to my mind. Sorry.
Yeah, the one difficulty we have seen is gas utility companies, because you think of, well, we'll put in a gas generator. But they really don't want to pipe the building if they can't run the boiler.
Correct.
And all of that. So you're really back to diesel.
Yeah, and then you're limited by the skid tank of how much you can store in there and how long you run it for and stuff like that. Sorry, not going down a rabbit hole. Any other questions? I think we're good.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very much. Look forward to it.
Yeah. So take like a 5-minute break.
Somebody downstairs? Can somebody go get them?
Yes, they've been.
I think PMA will run down to take care of it.
I want it back here. See you later. I was able to see the. Thank you. Good see you.
So what we'll do, take a 5-10 minute break, 5-minute break actually. We'll let them come up. So
Wait a few minutes.
yeah, just let these guys kind of move out and then we'll move them up.
How you doing?
All right.
Let's see if the clicker works.
Yep, go for that, and then I'll give a brief introduction for his perfect. So appreciate you guys showing up tonight. My name's Sean O'Rourke. I'm the chair of the town school building committee. I'll let everybody else introduce themselves. The previous people were here for our original introductions. So
I'm Warren, vice chair of the school and school committee.
Peter Rhodes, I'm the superintendent.
Sabina Meadow, sorry. Is it, are you done?
I can get going if you want.
I'm a great student. Sabina Meadow, I'm a school committee member and also on school committee.
Scott Turchak, school building.
Carrie Hurley, school building committee member.
Glenn Hoffman, school building committee member.
Tim Lombard, school building committee.
and one other gentleman, Mike Zulis, who will probably be joining us. He's en route, so he might be on his phone, so you might hear his name pop up too.
Great.
So, floor is yours.
All right, well, let us just introduce ourselves. So I'm Gene Raymond. I'm the principal at Raymond Design Associates. And we have a kind of collection of folks here. We can just go down the line.
If you could just share your screen too, because I don't think it's showing up on the Zoom. Sorry.
And I should introduce Nick. He's our rabbit master.
Love it. Mhm.
Because anyone,
Yeah.
You're sharing the other screen.
You're good.
I think
Yep.
are you waiting for
Shows
people to pop up? Or you
Nope,
good?
you're good.
All right, great. So I'm Gene. This is Nick.
Sorry.
Another pressure. And I'll just go.
Yeah, sure. I'm Angela Kavanaugh. I work for Raymond Design Associates, and I'm the Sustainability Director.
I'm Stephen Watchmore, Raymond Design Associates. I'm an architect and project manager.
I'm Adrienne Lennon with BSC Group, and I'm a scientist.
Good evening, Dominic Rinaldi, also with BSC Group, Senior Civil Engineer.
Hi, I'm David Warner, President of Warner Larson Landscape Architects.
And Mike Pearl, Educational Fellow at MATV Integrated Design.
Great. We're all set?
Yes, sir.
All right. We're really excited, so we have a ton to go through. If we go fast, please feel free to ask questions. We're gonna try to adhere to the 30 minutes, if you don't mind.
Appreciate it.
So obviously we're super excited about this, and we feel like we're a great fit for it. I think we bring a lot of value. I want you to remember that. Because we can do this pretty efficiently. We have the word speed up there, but really it's about being efficient, which translates to value. And we're, I guess, a pretty talented group, I'd say. Let's see if this thing, so now this is not going to be okay. Really sorry.
No problem.
Let's go to the next. Well, all right. All right. And so we're South Shore people, right? And so so it's really exciting to work close to home. And, we take, all of us, a professional and personal responsibility for what we do. We really take our work seriously. Kind of one of the unique things about our team, I believe, is that your group has some familiarity. We know that Dom and his group have been working with you. We've worked with Dom. We're currently working with Adrian on many other projects. And then, of course, your project manager knows us from work that we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years in the town of Hammond. So, and I think we have a real unique approach to planning, to programming and planning the building, in that Mike Grillo, who's a former educator and an education consultant, doesn't just come in and do visioning at the beginning and say, here's what I think they want. He actually will stay with our team, and we work with him all the way through design development. So he's kind of translating between the educators and the architects as we go forward. You probably saw our credentials. We've done a ton of secondary school work in the Commonwealth. We've also done a lot of early childhood. So when I saw this configuration, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And we've done it everywhere. So we've done a lot of pre-K centers, and our work in general, we're very practical. We have a construction management side to us, but we do beautiful work, create lively spaces. We flood everything with natural light, which has a major impact on learning. We're always talking about how this building we build, they're all different. We don't do cookie cutters, how they can reflect the locale there where they are. We're always trying to connect various levels of the building so that the school feels like a single community. And then we, of course, create beautiful spaces that are used by the school, but for the community. We're always talking about connecting with nature. David will address that going through, bringing the outside in or the inside out. We do all sorts of inspiring learning spaces, from quiet libraries to active classrooms. We incorporate durable surfaces. This is a middle school lobby up in Lynn and it's got terrazzo floors, it's got brick walls. So we know you have your first cost, but we're always thinking about your operational costs. And whenever we can, it's a great way to, I don't know, get everyone involved with it. We're always encouraging our clients to get public art into our buildings, if at all possible. And with all these buildings, sustainability is at the core, and I want to just have Angela talk a little bit about our approach to sustainability.
Thanks, Gene. Yeah, sustainability really is at the core of all our projects. There's a big umbrella that sustainability kind of encompasses. And it includes everything from, the stretch code, which we know is a new Massachusetts stretch code, which has got a lot of stretch to it. And I know you're a green community. Also, there's a lot of incentives out there in terms of government money. There's millions of dollars that can be put towards buildings if they're all electric, for instance, or if they have ground source heat pumps or solar panels. In addition, if a certification is something that your community is interested in getting for your school, we have experience managing LEED certifications, and there's also WELL certifications, which are more health related. So I like to say that we take a really practical approach to sustainability. We like to work with the client in order to kind of get our sustainability plan and what's important to them, however far they want to go with their sustainability goals. This is some of the buildings that we've done in the past. You can see how over the years they've gotten more energy efficient. And I'd like to just point to the last two, 2024 and 2025, which are schools undergoing construction and design right now. They're both all electric, net zero ready. They have ground source heat pumps and very low EUIs, which is energy usage intensity, which translates over to cost savings for the district.
So there's a lot of buzzwords about sustainability. And frankly, we're doing just what everyone else is doing, which is highly insulated, low energy use, and low operational costs. Steve is going to be our project manager, and I'll just ask him if he wants to go through his slides.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll start with our approach to managing a complicated project, and that's really any project for that matter, is to start with thinking about risk mitigation, being proactive with it. Avoiding risk starts and ends, all throughout the project. It starts at the beginning of the project, and it causes us to start thinking like a contractor. John Bartecki, who PMA is familiar with, is our in-house construction manager. That's unique to our business. And it gets us all thinking like a contractor and providing estimates along the way, early and continuously throughout the project, helps us avoid risk.
So, we show you beautiful spaces. And once these projects go out to bid and the spaces are being created, I just want to circle back to the end of the project. These are all brand new public schools, the most recent ones we've done. They're all extremely low on design related change orders, and they're all below 1%. The elementary school we just finished for the town of Marblehead is actually 0.04%. I mean, there were like 0 change orders on that project. So I think we not only do beautiful work, we also have this whole technical side of our brain. We're really mitigating risk and managing our clients' finances. So how do you make it happen? Sorry.
Thank you. We're here to make it happen, and I think this is a message that we want to get across really strongly here, which is that we're very eager, but more importantly, we're available. We're ready to hit the ground running from day one, and that's from our senior staff at RDA and our consultants. Throughout programming and planning, there's sort of these 4 tasks that are going on simultaneously, and we all have availability. We currently at RDA are only working on 2 school design projects. One of those is MSBA, the other one's a smaller ad rent. Neither of those are in the feasibility or schematic design phase, which is very intensive. We are fully available for this project.
And we think it through at the beginning, and this is, our work plan, which we can come back to, but there's 4 simultaneous things going on at once between programming, site design, budget management, et cetera.
This project is more than just about the middle school. We understand this is about a district-wide K-8 solution. So as soon as you open your middle school, you'll immediately on day one, be able to see a difference in all of your elementary schools, Pierce Middle School, even the high school. You know this, you've done really good work over the past several years. We're very aware of it. We think you're on the right path and would like to continue that process. These classrooms educationally make them more appropriate to the curriculum. And that means more than just, pulling 5th grade and pre-K out of the classroom, out of the schools. But how do you make these buildings, these environments more appropriate to your district's curriculum?
So we want to support you during our study phase. So at town meeting, everyone understands that this is a district-wide solution.
It is getting the consensus. And how do you get the consensus? You get people in the room, you over-communicate, you engage with the community, and that's how you get consensus. When you go to town meeting, you want to be able to say with confidence, this is the project and this is the time to do it.
I think along the way, the educational visioning and programming process and community forums and engagement as well, we tap into different stakeholders because every stakeholder comes with a unique perspective. Whether it's Milton's district leadership, tapping specifically into students, you can see there, having integrated conversations with educators and content leaders specifically about very program specific needs, and then cross-generational groups like you see in that bottom image. It's so powerful, literally when an elementary kid and mom and dad or whoever is with them, literally sharing their voices at the same time. Talking about engagement, these are actually my former middle school students. I talk about engaging the middle school student because their voices are loud and clear and they really can speak to their needs. Middle school kids can be really academically focused. On the left-hand side, they're having a literature circle book club. And on the right-hand side, when we left the library and went back to the classroom, they're acting like little kids and touching their backsides, by playing a brain break energizer game. And so supporting their needs is really important. Part of this integrated educational planning process really has 4 major components. So we start with observation and immersion to really support and elevate and position stakeholders to even imagine what can be. And once they have the capacity to do that, then we move on to the visioning and programming process, talking about child development and teaching and learning, and then the needs of the learning environment as well because of child development and teaching and learning. Educational planning also means rethinking existing programs and practices. I'm really interested to explore how we can take the high school child studies program and given the proximity of the 7th, 8th grade building, how we can bring that back and really support that. Or, implementing more SEL and academic supports. Now we're going to have a completely different grade configuration. Now 7th graders are the youngest people in the building. 8th grade remains the oldest, and 6th grade is the oldest in a different building. That completely changes the dynamic, and we'll study and explore that as well. Looking at impacts of grade configuration. So having deep conversations about, what happens to the location of special education programs. I know that the district, in researching, it's still current, the REACH program, the therapeutic program. What happens when we split the middle school population? Do we have 2 distinct programs in each school? Or do we bring that population to the one school to really support those needs and minimize the transitions for, some of the most needy students in the population? Also looking at pre-K, parent involvement, and how we bring all of those things together.
So this is why we love working with Mike, because he's just a great translator between what you want us to do and what you want to accomplish. I think it's really important. So site, I want to talk about site a little bit. And what we noticed was this is really a fairly small site. Like, we know it works and we're excited because we have a building and a layout that works there. But we have to be very, or you have to be very careful about what happens on this 6.8 acres. And just to put it in perspective, that's a couple of acres smaller than the Pierce. So permitting and design, you asked us if we could look at the schedule. And permitting, I'd like Adrian to talk about, but these green rectangles are all permitting milestones that you're gonna have to go through with the Article 97 and meet the process. If we can finish it up by December, year end, beginning of next year, we're very, very confident that we can have a school done, customized to your program, and it could be ready to go out to bid when when the permitting is ready, or a few months later, depending on how you want to do the financing. But we know we can do this. One of your other questions was what's the difference MSBA and not MSBA? MSBA, the fastest track you can do is about 19 months from the day you start till you're out to bid. You know, this could be anywhere from 11 to 16, which translates into obviously cost savings. But Adrian, we have a lot of permitting to do, right?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for that. So we know already that the town of Milton is in the process of the Article 97 disposition and transfer. And we're looking forward to collaborating and supporting that work too. The site does have a couple of other environmental constraints to take into consideration. You can see on the plan side west is Pine Tree Brook, which is a resource area that travels through most of Milton. It does have a buffer zone associated with it. And then in addition to that, there's an overlay of National Heritage Endangered Species Priority Habitat. I was able to surface what that endangered species is. It is a wetland obligate species, a vascular plant. So we can do a little additional bit of surveying out there to find out exactly where the location of that plant may be in the event that we need to cross over into any natural heritage species area. And then the final problem that you kind of have to navigate is the traffic matter. This is all in the context of the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, which is MIPA. It's a multi-agency permitting office of the Commonwealth. And there are a certain series of thresholds that if you cross over in terms of impact, you actually have to go to the state and have all the agencies review it at once. Okay. So the third is the transportation matter. And we are thinking about traffic and transportation traveling across the site and also coming off of Bluefield Ave. And in the event that there's going to be a threshold, we do a traffic impact assessment and make sure of that. And if we are in this space where we need to do a MIPA filing, of course, you're also an agent to have to do environmental justice outreach. We have a long history of doing that and had a really great experience doing it. Lynn, great feedback from the community. So it was a nice opportunity to actually gather testimonial from the wide community on the project to present to the state and show how great it is for that permitting exercise.
Great, thank you. So, Don, now we're going to figure out how to build it.
Yeah, so but building on the great work that the committee's already done, that we at BSC had the privilege to be a part of, as Gene mentioned earlier. We envision this going out, and you may have seen it in the schedule in sort of two construction packages. One would be sort of an early site enabling package, a bit under Chapter 30 for horizontal construction. If you're not familiar, I know a lot of you are, so you aren't. It's a little, I'll call it simpler bidding process. And the first part of that would be to relocate, it's Guile Road? Guile Road. There was some debate on our end on that. To relocate Guile Road, we've done some concepts for you to shift that to the north in a way that you can very quickly get that construction done, keep the existing road open, transition over, say, a weekend, and immediately get that high school traffic and the future construction traffic onto the new road, which then opens up this space where we've already been looking at creating that pad for the new building. So what you have to do for grades, what you have to do with potentially some walls, utilities, et cetera, to really build that site up. And then you can transition into phase 2 of the actual building process.
Yeah, so we come to the site with a beautiful pad. We do some retaining walls, some cutting and filling that's happened. This package goes out early, and then we did the vertical work, which is the building. So we've tested a template that we have and is working really well, which is a 3-story school footprint, long parent queuing, drop off for a pre-K center that will be here on the right side. But the queuing could also continue around the front to the front door, bus drop-offs, which are independent of the parent drop-off. And we know the site plan works really well, but David is going to go through the site planning. He's going to lead this effort.
Thank you, Jane. So you've been hearing about constraints, right? I want to talk about some opportunities. We're really inspired, even though this is spatially constrained, that there's real opportunities to create some unique outdoor learning spaces. One of the things we've learned from all of our experience working in public schools is that these outdoor learning spaces need to be close and really convenient to the indoor academic spaces so that they can be used spontaneously by the user and easily maintained by facilities. We have in blue here an area that Jane will show later in the model that can be up on the roof. So the top left image, for instance, and the other images there are more at grade outdoor learning spaces that are outside of the spaces directly adjacent to the building. And then lastly, out towards this natural area, Plan East, on the way to a pathway to the high school, you can also take advantage of those beautiful natural resources that are also being preserved as part of the Article 97 land. So looking at play spaces, middle school area, we're showing like a multi-sport court off to the left end of the building there. That's also an area that could be potential building expansion in the future. There's close proximity to the high school athletic facilities, the stuff above, courts and fields, so there's room for that expansion. The playground for pre-K is down on the Plan East end, and having that space that's very safe and enclosed. If you look at the picture on the bottom left, that's a pre-K play area that we've designed, my office has designed for the town of Hopkinton at their Marathon Elementary School. Next slide. And then the last thing I want to talk about are the campus connections, which is like one of the really smart things to think about doing the middle school at this campus. There's a lot of synergies we've already been thinking about how having this facility on the same site, but the connections so that kids can actually walk or ride their bicycle between the two school from off-campus neighborhoods around and among the spaces on the campus, whether it's out the Pine Tree Brook Path or this new nature path that we can construct. So we've got a couple of images on the left or examples of the types of connections that we've designed on public schools getting from point A to point B.
Yeah, we know there's an obvious connection between the early childhood program at the high school and a potential pre-K wing on this end of the building. There's obviously the potential for athletic connections as well, and then other community trails, sidewalks down to Blue Hill Ave, et cetera. So, like, we're excited that we have Mike on our team. We're excited we have David on our team because these people really bring a lot to it. We want to run you through our thoughts. Again, we are just constructing a building that has a pre-K wing. We said, boy, this would be perfect. Happens to be an elementary school. We're doing it with PMA. But working with Mike and Steve and other people in our firm, we're like, how do we turn this into a middle school? Because it already has a great pre-K wing. It fits on the site circulation works. So what you're seeing, what I'm going to say, this is kind of reminiscent of what we're doing in Hingham, but it doesn't have to be that way. This same organization works well, and we're not going to come and say this is what the thing has to look like. You guys have a rich history. You have beautiful buildings. I can't believe, your fire station back there is like unbelievable. But your school system has kind of a language. And so I don't know, we will be exploring things and taking feedback from you and the community as to what form, this template might take. Let me just explain a little bit about it, which is on the first floor to the left side is a community wing, right? Cafetorium, platform, gymnasium, a multi-purpose room, which in this case, we feel like could support the pre-K program. It could be an adaptive pre-K, but could be used for many things, yoga studio, but adaptive pre-A or play for the kids. We have an administrative wing that covers the main entrance, a 2-story learning commons, And the pre-K, as I mentioned, has its own entrance. So really this pre-K wing, which is pretty much what we're doing in Hingham and ready to go. One of the reasons there might be some value in working with this is connected to that outdoor play area that David mentioned. On the upper, there's 2 upper levels, but the second floor, this building is already set up for team teaching. We had all the grade levels sharing a commons, and in between, there's the opportunities for special ed, for language, maybe a STEAM hub. And we also have a large media center meeting MSBA square footage needs, and it kind of spills out onto the upper level of the 2-story lobby. So if you will let us try, I think Mike and I don't know if you want to come over or stay where you are, but you know, we thought we'd kind of fly you through this thing a little bit. Can you see the model?
No, we're seeing whatever's on the screen.
So
there we go.
Screen is the hard one.
You should have the model on the left and then photos on the right. So you see both.
Yeah, so the people in Zoom see it, but we're only seeing that. I mean, I can just share my screen with everybody here, but is there any way to get it on both? You just duplicate your display rather than extend.
Is it actual animation or the slides?
No, it's animation, yeah.
So you can discontinue the PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah.
Just stop the PowerPoint.
And close out the PowerPoint next.
Sorry, no rush, man.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, share the screen. Share the screen rather than the application.
Thank you, David.
There we go.
All right.
Awesome. Yes, sir.
Excellent. Okay. So I guess what I want to say about this is we have it's a template, right? It is not your middle school because we haven't even started talking to you about your school, but we do know it works. And this is one of the tools that we can use when we're out communicating to the community and taking feedback. So what you're seeing is kind of a black and white model, but you know, it's to scale. There's outdoor learning areas, and what I thought I'd do is just bring you into the main entrance, and then we can stop in the on the first floor of the lobby. Nick's a heck of a driver. So what we want to do is, you know, when we enter in, we want to see activity. We want to be kind of in the heart of the school. And if you remember from the plan, we have a multi-purpose room, which could be a movement studio or a pre-K zone. And then there's floor openings. So Nick, if you pull up that picture, we're gonna go through a combination of going through the model and pulling up some examples.
I think one of the things when Artie and I went through this process, we kind of did our own mini visioning and programming based on every single thing I could find out about the district to start to understand what the district needs are, and then also just best practices in middle school design and middle school education. So I think what this is showing is creating opportunities where kids can kind of just take a moment and take a breath throughout the day, and also exploring the idea of, does every child need to eat directly in the cafeteria, or if the cafeteria is right through that class, is there an opportunity for kids to have a more quieter sensory experience just outside? And what if there's books out there? What if a kid wants to read a book instead of eating, you know, in the loud cafeteria, and that lobby can be used for cafe nights and things like that as well?
So Nick, if you go a little bit further down and look this way, you know, one of the things is some kids may not want to go into the hubbub of the cafeteria on certain days. So they could go across the hallway and there's a quiet dining area for them. There's also another area up on the second floor that's connected to the media center, but still connected visually to the cafeteria. So now Nick's gonna just.
So this is an example of in Westwood, the Hamlin Elementary School, where envisioning they kind of described as kids having the opportunity to, you know, dip their toe into the cafeteria. And you can see how it's visually connected for supervision, but it's acoustically separate, again, to give kids that opportunity. And there's lunch bunch groups that are going to happen out there and, student council meetings and things like that. But it just creates so many different layers to really meet kids where they are.
Now if we have a two-sided stage. It opens up onto the cafetorium or the gymnasium. If we stop here, there's natural light in this stage. And if Nick pulls up this photo right here, this is something that we did in the town of Marblehead, where we had open to the gym, open to the cafeteria, but we set it up so it could be used as a spare music room. And so that it's not just a space that gets used 2% of the time during the day. And then into the gymnasium, if you have larger gatherings, you can put, it's a bigger space, you have bleachers, and you can put more seats. So this is an example of a stage in a gymnasium that we did on one of our middle schools up in the North Shore. So they have the capacity for almost 1,200 kids. This is a large gym, but you can see that the stage opens up this way as well.
And one of the powerful things about having a double-sided stage is, especially in middle school, I was the theater guy. You could have various types of performances, some that are way more intimate than others, and literally have two completely separate things going on at the same time.
Where's the accessibility for that stage? I'm just curious.
There's ramps.
They're beyond, okay.
Yep. Yeah. But it is, we were thinking about stages don't get used that often. So we definitely made a point of getting light in there and making sure it could be a multi-purpose space. So Nick, if you went up to the second floor, maybe up one of the, we have a series of light wells that come down through this building, because we want to use every single square foot of space that you're constructing for learning. And a lot of times that's going to include corridors, right? So, but the corridors are in the middle of the building, and we want to make sure we can get natural light down into those areas. So Nick just showed you that, one of the light wells. If we come down toward the learning commons, you're passing the media center. And Nick, maybe you could take to that that second alternative dining or project area, and maybe you could pull. So this is the one that I showed you that you could see from the cafeteria. And again, this could be another place for someone to lunch, or it could be another place for someone to do projects. And if you go through the media center, you can kind of spin around, but we can exit back into our commons. This is the upper level of the two-story lobby space.
One of the things that we studied in a lot of the research that I do, because I was the English guy, so I'm all about books and literacy, is how do you increase a kid's reading life, especially at the middle level? Because that's always like the breaking point of whether they're going to be a lifelong reader or not. And so studies have shown that the more you get books in kids' hands, it increases their capacity and interest in reading. So that image is from the Gates Middle School in Situate. And you can see we're studying, is that something we could do? Bringing book stacks. Yes, there might be a library still as a destination, but what if books are closer to kids? And so literally their day-to-day experience of going in and out of their academic neighborhoods, there's books at hand's reach. And in that school, the circulation increased 200%, which is amazing.
And this is a space you'd see right when you came in the lobby. You see it up there. So that media center kind of learning commons is connected directly to one of the outdoor learning spaces. In this case, it's a terrace, so it would be overlooking the woods between your school and Blue Hill Ave. Part of it's in shade. Part of it's got a beautiful southern exposure. And there's all sorts of learning opportunities that I'm sure the school will come up with, but we have some examples. This is a learning deck in the town of a city of New Bedford, but they have weather stations. They have kind of outdoor classroom. They have planting beds. I know Mike's been involved with some where some of the planting beds are on wheels, and they can actually bring plants into the building during the cold months. So if we kind of go down this way, this outdoor learning space, which has some STEAM attributes, could be connected to an art, technology STEAM hub that's between two of those clusters of classrooms.
One of the things that we'll study in visioning and programming is people use the buzzword of STEAM, but people always forget the A in STEAM, which is art and arts. So what if art and technology and literacy really all became one thing? What if you could take an art room and a tech room and they could be outfitted almost the same way, so that over the building's lifetime, as your enrollment continues to change, as your programs continue to change, that you could have two arts going on at the same time. You could have art and STEAM going on, or you can open up the wall between the two and literally create this really dynamic opportunity. Like the Fuse curriculum that you're currently using for STEAM, I'm familiar with it. And one of the projects is kids have to literally create the fastest roller coaster they can. You need space for that. So imagine spilling into each classroom, but then also spilling out academically into this kind of shared commons, so that way kids are working on the floor or everybody's gathering to do the mini lesson, and then they sprinkle into the different room they need based on the materials they're using or where they're at in the design process. It literally creates that personalized learning and that in the moment learning that kids excel at.
So spilling out into the hallway, right? So that's why I was talking about bringing natural light. If we go down to the pre-K level, there's actually an opportunity. Again, we had 7 classrooms. Maybe it's enough, maybe it needs to be more. But, we've done pre-K centers all over the place, but we could also have that common space outside the classrooms. This happens to be the main lobby and the welcoming center at the Dedham Early Childhood Center, which we opened a couple of years ago. So it's not just keeping the students in the classrooms, it's kind of helping them all gather and
it's actually flipping it. It's actually saying the shared common space where we're all together, especially in pre-K. Early childhood has so many things, blocks, dramatic play areas, sand, water tables, things like that take up so much classroom space, that if you bring those out kind of in a central community location, you create this amazing sense of belonging, and the classrooms are almost freed up to do different things the teachers don't often get to do. And when it's raining and snowing like tomorrow, and you have indoor recess for an entire week or entire winter, these spaces can become indoor recess times as well.
Or they could go to that multi-purpose room that's off the library. So then connected at the end of this wing is the pre-K playground that David had talked about. This is a safe, segregated, age-appropriate playground for the pre-K students. And I think with that, we will, let me actually, Nick, pull up.
Just a quick, we're about 5 minutes over for the presentation. Okay. Yeah, just giving you a heads up, so.
All right. Well, anyway, so in questions, we can come back to pictures of examples, but Nick, maybe just spin it around and show how the campus works. So if you're good, and then if you head toward the main entrance, so we have the pre-K playground with the path to the high school.
We cut the majority of the parking behind the building so that you can celebrate more of the open space in front. It's hard to do on a tight site.
This was all imported from the Revit model.
Yes, and so, we do have the advantage, right? Honestly, this template seems to work really well, and it's based on the school that we're working with right now. So, but the spaces you've seen and the arrangements are actually not very close to what we're doing in Binghamton to this elementary school. So you can just see the whole thing. There's outdoor learning opportunities all over the place, and obviously the connection to your high school campus. So I think with that, we should probably. I do want to say one thing. I want to say this is a skeleton that we can work with, and we can be efficient with it. I think we really enjoy working with David and Mike, and they're not here just for the interview, and they're not here just for schematics. They'll be through the whole project. So, and I think there's a lot of value to that.
Excellent. No, it's fine, thank you. So, with that, I'll just open up to general questions from any members, and then I got a couple myself.
So, thank you.
Yeah. In the architect, let's see, I'm sure there's something.
Your turn, and I'm wrong.
What's up?
I actually started asking questions.
All right, so,
I asked this, I like to ask this question. Is your construction administration person going to be part of the design team?
Yes, he's actually out in the hallway. We couldn't fit him in.
There he is. He was on one of the slides.
I'm with them the entire time. I spend time in the office with them, overseeing what's going on.
I asked that question because I know I'm an architect. Some architectural firms have a CA department. That's all they do.
We have a
Some firms collaborate, and I like the collaborative approach.
Yeah,
I
so
like to hear that.
John actually goes to every single design meeting. He goes to every meeting, there's a project, and I think our clients are like, who's this guy? Like, why is he sitting here? And every once in a while, he'll throw in something, but he's an amazing asset because it really frees up to do the design work. When we're doing slabs and slab edges and putting steel up, I mean, it's just, everything goes quickly because everything's already dimensioned, all the ducts are figured out, all the coordination. So, I mean, if you're an architect, I'm speaking to you, but it really does go smooth.
How much design time and construction time do you think? Well, construction time, maybe not, but how much time do you think we can save with this model school approach? I know it's not technically a model school, but it's a model school approach.
Yeah. Well, I think depending on your funding, like in a couple of communities, we've got the schematics, right? We set the budget, and then town meeting's not till the fall. So we could pause, and then, you might be into a, 9-month design sequence, or, some communities have kind of at their risk or whatever, because they've gone to town meeting, funded design continuation. I honestly think you could get the thing done in 6 to 9 months on the street. But I don't want you to think we have the answer here, right? Because we haven't even started. But we do have, it's a great template.
What's your anticipated, just site work aside, early site package? What do you see for construction schedule for the building?
Like 18 months, John?
It can be done. Once you take all the site work out of it, which is what the early package is about, getting the plateau, getting all the grading. You typically bring the entire site to subgrade.
Yep.
Walls, everything. And what that does is it takes what is 18 to 20 months of construction. It takes that 4 to 5 months of site work that is normal to a job. When you start, you have to gear up, get all that done before you can do anything in the ground. So you can, I think you can build a building in 14 months. From the day you have a building cap, but you gotta be able to, we're doing it in hand.
Well, that's the nice thing about carving out the site package and bidding that while we're still getting the building package ready.
This is exactly what we did in hand. We established a building plateau. We awarded a contract mid-June, and they're under contract to be ready August, a year later. So that's 14 months. And they're whining, but they're gonna get it done.
I blame you. I blame you. So question I have, because you have the civil engineers here, stormwater runoff is going to be a big one.
Yes.
So what are plans to address that?
It's gonna be a mix, and it kind of goes into both us and David and his team in working with, whether it's obviously we are gonna fall under the Loans Protection Act. It will likely be some underground systems. I have found in some schoolwork or educational work, there is an opportunity for some surface bioretention type systems that you can use in educational facets. And here where you have, where you're gonna have this school plus you have the high school, depending on where you put them, you can actually have them incorporated into both. You can have some that are with educational components and signage that are geared towards, the younger kids, and then stuff that's geared much further along to the older kids. But I'm a big believer in green infrastructure and natural treatment. It's cheaper to build. It works better. It's cheaper to maintain. It just has all those advantages. Plus, you can make them, David will make them really, really attractive as well.
We just did one in Orange that had no underground retention.
Yeah,
It was all
in an ideal world, I would, it's a tight site, so I would imagine we will probably have some, and do have some parking, so there's some opportunities.
Yeah, the infiltration capacity of the soils is going to dictate to a large extent, like how much volume can be mitigated in the open detention areas or open fire retention areas. Maintenance is something I want to mention a little bit about. We've done a lot of green infrastructure and school projects, but we're also very tuned into the priorities that your facilities people can maintain those spaces. Having a beautiful bioretention area on day one isn't necessarily our goal. It'll look good in pictures in our portfolio, but 3 or 4 years later, it's going to be very challenging for your facility people to maintain it. What we found to be very successful are more herbaceous plant species that can be mowed down once a season to keep the woody species out, make sure that they don't become trash collectors and stuff. But it can be something that's very beautiful, like these ornamental grasses in there that are wet tolerant, and so they can look beautiful in the fall, and then just cut them down before they start to grow in the spring, and it's easy to maintain.
And I was gonna, of course, I always have to cut in, right? But the night, I really think it's another value add is having the civil, the permitting person, and the traffic person all from one firm. That's, we're gonna save time on building and design, but permitting is really gonna be something that we have to be mindful of as we go through the NEPA process.
Can you expand more on the traffic, the transportation stories?
Sure. Well, I'll let you guys, because it's under your,
You want to start?
Bailey, right?
Do you want me to start? Okay, certainly. Because you are building a new school and you're going to be bringing a new student population to the site, you are going to have to do some traffic counts and understand how many new average daily trips are coming to the site and by what mechanism. Is it going to be by bus or is it going to be by parent drop off? So we will have to do some traffic counts of Guile Road before, during, and after the construction. And we'll do some projections based on how you're going to reconfigure your program to understand how many new students will be coming to the site. After a certain point of threshold, there are a couple of different combinations. There's one that is 2,000 average daily trips, and then another that's 3,000 average daily trips in the eyes of the NEPA office that require mitigation. And that mitigation is often offsetting the carbon impact of gas vehicles coming to the site. And a lot of that is done by the greenhouse gas analysis that's associated with the school building itself. So this is really common in redevelopment projects now. It's not just a municipal issue, it's a commercial issue too. Most hotels and retail commercial centers are now being forced to move to an all-electric facility because they have so many new vehicles coming onto their parking lots every single day. So one thing, that we'll be keeping in mind and really focusing on is how many parking spots we're putting on the site, how many vehicles we anticipate coming, what type of vehicle it is, and organizing the site constraints around that.
That's the other thing too, is we understand that most students who take the bus, go to high school and middle school, drop off in the same bus, they travel on the bus together.
Yeah, superintendent.
Yeah, so the the buses are already going to the site, high school, because it's campus setting. So we could understand actually how many parents are dropping off and picking up.
When you started answering the question, you said you have to, who's the bus or your team, who's going to do the site?
Oh, we
We will do that for you.
Yeah, we will. The only thing we really need to know is how the program is gonna change and if you anticipate changing your bus cycle, because you'll have 3 stops. So if you're gonna rearrange your busing program so that it's a little bit different, you may not be able to capture those pass-by trips that are currently inside of the high school program. So it will definitely be collaborative and understanding as the project develops, but we will be doing the transportation impact assessment.
So there's a big impact for the MIPA and the permitting, right? I mean, they want to know about traffic and greenhouse gases. When we do a traffic study, we did it in Hingham, we did it in Bridgewater, we do it everywhere. Adrian kind of focused on what's going on here. Our traffic engineers, or BSCs, are going to be looking at various intersections and figuring out, because right now there's not 600 or 700 kids coming here. You know, they're up here and you know, they're elementary schools. So I want to make sure you understand, you know, we're cognizant of what's going to happen on this campus, but we also will be doing a broader review because it's going to impact the neighborhood and people are going to ask about it.
Right.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
So one more question.
Yeah, of course.
A couple of questions that the committee had sent to you was to help us look at doing MSBA or going without the MSBA.
Okay.
Can you let us know
Yes.
the cost per square foot from your experience, MSBA and non-MSBA?
I am not sure that I'm not sure there's much difference, but John, do you think there would be, or? Do you think there'd be a cost per square foot difference doing an MSBA project versus a project by a municipality? Same school, same site?
I don't think they influence it greatly, other than they're complaining about how it's not what they think it should be. But I don't think our designs are influenced by whether it's MSBA or whether it's not MSBA.
I don't think the cost.
Still filed subject construction, right?
It's still gonna be, the building is the building and the market.
There are many other factors that get us good bidding, and it's not the MSBA.
So as you guys pointed out, schedule-wise, MSBA versus non-MSBA. Hold on one second. Thank you. Schedule-wise, MSBA versus non-MSBA, the escalation associated with the MSBA process. There you go. Can you touch on that?
Yeah.
So not just raw square footage costs, but overall project cost.
The benefiting end is the lack of inflation and the lack of escalation. So if you can do it 6 months quicker because you're not going through all the design reviews that the MSBA requires, that translates into real dollars in terms of when you bid.
So there's a couple things on MSBA. One is when you're doing their process, again, the fastest you can possibly get through, in our opinion, is about 19 months from the day you start to the day you're starting to go vertical. You know, we try to cut the construction by doing early site packages. We think, you know, depending whether you do interim funding and you bid a little bit earlier, or you wait till town meeting and you bid later, you know, we think it's 11 to 16 months. You know, so 11 is an 8-month saving over MSBA, right? But, you know, how you want to handle the funding of design is obviously a discussion.
Yep.
I also want to say, like with MSBA, they're prescribing the size of all your spaces. And, you know, you may not need spaces that are 850 square feet or, you know, 2,000, you know, I don't know, 1,400 for a science lab. Your program, you may have smaller class sizes and you want it that way, and your program doesn't require that square footage. So sometimes they're following their template, and it's a great agency. They did a great job. But you know, sometimes you're building more than you might need, which also translates.
I think you went into this earlier. The model you presented,
yes,
that meets the MSBA requirements or classroom sizes.
It does meet the MSBA requirements with some manipulation for all the core academic spaces. The one thing I would say is MSBA says you need a 1,600 square foot stage in a middle school. This stage is 1,000 square feet. So I don't know, I think 1,000 square feet's fine, honestly, but, you might want a bigger cafeteria or bigger stage, or they might force you to if you are under the MSBA, and what you have here could work just fine. And does that make sense?
Does.
Okay.
So one question I have is, for us right now, we're limited, or, based on the advertisement that we put out there, is our budget's $475,000 for, the fee.
Yeah.
On the schedule you're presenting, where does the 475 take us?
It would take you through the end of schematic design and all the permitting.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, I don't know if there's reimbursables for some of the permitting work, because sometimes that can get very pricey.
Yep.
And I do want to say, like, Steve had that other slide where there's really 4 things happening at once. Mike and I are doing the programming.
Yep.
These guys are doing land development. Angela and Steve are working on design stuff, but Steve Watchorn, besides managing the project, we want him involved. You can go back to the other one, but we want to do your elementary school work at the same time. And I know you said that would be reimbursable or whatever, we're fine. It looks like you guys have solved it, and we just need to validate it and get it into a presentable form.
Okay. And so cost that you're showing up there basically comes in June or July, but in your proposal you issued, you indicated that it could possibly be end of April.
For
April 2024.
For the schematic.
For cost.
Oh, April 2024. I'm really sorry, I don't.
Yeah, it's on page 5 of your proposal.
Yes.
You guys indicated that you could have costs essentially by the end of April. I'm just trying to, I think that's extremely, I think it's extremely aggressive because there's a lot of stuff that has to get worked out. So I'm trying to figure out, are we talking June, July for costing, or are we talking April?
I don't know if it's April or May or June, but
somewhere between April and June.
The thing about working with this is we know the costs because we're building it right now. And with John on our team, and we have professional cost estimators as well, but when we're looking at things, I don't know, we're constantly asking, what's this going to do to the budget? And he's constantly telling us, you can do it, you can't do it. But the spirit of what we were saying in the proposal was, we want to get you information as fast as you can so you guys can socialize it up until whenever you're going to ask for funding.
Yep, appreciate that.
I feel like I'm talking really fast. And
it's all good. There's a lot to cover.
We do this with MSBA. The schematic design estimate is one thing, but we do what they call what's PSI? What's the preferred schematic option? Some jobs we've done 10 or 15 options, and we've had to reduce pricing for those that, in the end, that the option chosen at that the price is very close to that. We try to think of everything and keep the surprises to a minimum, so that the first numbers we come up with are where we are or lower at the end, other than escalation and inflation. So it's not uncommon to come up with decent numbers early on.
Yeah. I don't know, the kind of a left brain, right brain combination.
Oh, yeah.
I think we do really nice work, honestly.
Yeah.
We're focused on design and programming and creating the spaces. But, we have this whole other side that's so practical.
So can we go to just the site plan one more time, just for people?
One more.
Yeah, the one that has the building on it.
Yes.
Yep, perfect. So with that, thinking of the building just as a block, right? It's maneuverable around the site. For example, then on the right side of the page on the campus property line that you see there, right to the right of that is an elderly development there, Home Inc.
Yeah.
So we want to be cognizant of them, of where the school's located, where the parking's located. So basically, we've had discussions with them leading. I'm just saying this more for the public's consumption of there's parking, there's playgrounds, and there's a building. So one of those three are going to end up over in that component, that area that's there in their proximity. So, part of what we want to do too is work with them after this, once we make a selection, to kind of figure out what parts and pieces are going to end up over there.
Yep, that's not a problem. It's kind of David's specialty.
Yep.
Yeah, that lot right there that we're showing is really embedded into the hill with the big retaining wall supporting the track.
Yep.
All the way back around to the east side too, and then you've got the big woodland. So really, the housing is more along just the driveway portion of that, not so much the parking.
Yep.
And of course, the lighting would all be full cut off, low fixtures and dimmable with controls that allow you to turn it off if entirely if that's appropriate from a safety standpoint.
But we call it test it. We know it works.
Yeah,
We tested
exactly.
it. But during the process, if you guys say, hey, it's really important to pick up another 25 feet or whatever, and things have to shift, that's part of the process. And we're very cognizant of the issues here, and other issues around the site. John,
This basic layout, before it was this, had 5 or 6 orientation options. The program was pretty much the same inside, but it was orientated in 5 or 6 different ways. So it's just a question of manipulating it if that's what you need.
Would we have the southern exposure on that patio? The way it's laid out here?
Well, south is over here, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Yeah, so,
It's a southwest.
so southwest,
Okay.
exactly. But, I mean, that learning deck up there, that's gonna be amazing, because, you give kids birding scopes or whatever, and they're looking down into that conservation land. It's also a protected area. It's up on the 2nd floor. So if you want to leave weather stations out or birding scopes or telescopes or whatever, you don't have to worry about what happens. You don't have to bring it in and out every night. You know what I mean? But David does have, outdoor learning areas. There's parts that have eastern exposure in the morning, but shaded in the afternoon. There's a variety of areas that, we look at.
Yep.
And I'm really excited about nature walks and connecting to the early childhood, program over at the high school. It's something that everyone does, but we've been doing it for 30 years.
Yep.
Every time we work on a high school.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I hope it all works out, because we are looking for something to do. I would love to. I would like to work on something. I really would like to work on close to home. It really means a lot to us.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
So we'll take a 5-minute break. Anybody has to use the restroom or anything, and then we'll all come back. Yep, right back here. So for people online, we're just taking a 5-minute break, and we'll be back in the room in about 5 minutes. Just see if Mike has rejoined back yet. It's not. So, all right. I'll just start off by saying, I think that was impressive. You know what I mean? For 2 firms that we put this out to basically right before Christmas, early December, to do the work that, was presented tonight in the 2 options, from both of them for, what we're doing. I'm impressed, 2 different kind of presentations with different options and everything there. Some really good stuff. So for the deliberation, like I was saying, is I think we'll just go around each person, give your pros, cons, your overall feedback. And then after we go around everybody, we'll just do a vote after that of, rate them 1 to 2, we'll do a tally. And then whoever gets the most ones, we'll confirm it, and then we'll be good. So, Mr. Loring, would you like to start? Just going.
Sure. Yeah.
I can go this way.
No, that's all right.
Jump in.
Yep.
We check references.
Is there
just as a
I did
some more
happen to
background
a
for
little
little bit just through conversations of other projects that I know or people dealing with them.
We've talked about other projects as well, and they both have, I'm working with obviously RDA on Hingham, and we'll give them our own reference rate. We've heard great feedback on Arrowstreet as well. So both quality firms.
we did the checks before we did the shortlist, just to make sure that we're not bringing in someone who we can check out. We got very good feedback.
Okay, great. Arrowstreet's doing the Squantum School in Quincy. That's what I got feedback on that. That was, it was very good. There was some discussion about, the public felt like they needed more engagement, and this wasn't specifically on Arrowstreet, but I think Arrowstreet was very responsive to that request. And now the whole neighborhood there is really on board with the project, really into it.
Great. No problem. Any other general things before we start with each person too? Sorry, first time doing this.
Can I just ask about?
Yeah, please.
In the second presentation, when they brought up the other schools, are they talking about actually going in and touching the space to turn it back when we, or is it, I couldn't understand what they were kind of getting at. And I don't know if I missed it because I was up watching the Super Bowl last night, but I'm just curious, when they talk about like touching those other schools, are they talking about reconfiguring when you take those grades out and put them in this new place?
Yeah, I think.
Was that your understanding or? Understanding?
Yeah, my take, and I'll let anybody else chime in, was just acknowledgement of, once we move those spaces out, now there's space at those other schools that will have to get, from a district perspective, repurposed. You know what I mean? Because if we're pulling them out of a classroom, moving them somewhere else and vacating a classroom, what others coming in there? That's kind of where we'll turn over, during this process. After we get the school program laid out, we know who's moving out, where, like, quantity wise of classrooms, which we have some now, but as the date gets closer and we're opening up, what happens to those vacated classrooms and who utilizes them? I think it was just an acknowledgement of that.
That's also, I took it as an acknowledgement that that's just the fact of the matter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, because there's been no talk about anything.
The existing facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other one that we'll have to get figured out at some point too, I think, would the pre-K and the fifth grade coming out of the elementary schools will be, I think, a little bit straightforward. I think the middle school, converting it to just 2 grade levels, and what does that do up there, will take a little bit more work. But, again, I think it was just more of an acknowledgement of, once we do this school, that's the plan.
Yeah, especially if we try to move central administration to Pierce.
Yep.
Great space. Is it helpful to go around and talk just about what you want me to talk about both firms, my takeaways from both firms?
Yeah,
just generally.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll start it out. So Arrowstreet, I it's in a disclosure. Obviously, I worked for Brook School. I did the high school building that they showed there. It was my project. So that was an extremely successful project, right? Limited budget, very quick timeline, right next to an occupied building. Lots of permitting and state agencies, DCAM property, all these things. So I worked on Arrowstreet, also did our MATV campus before I got there. They're currently doing an addition project, which is about 20,000 of new square footage and interior renovation. They did designs for an addition on our East Boston campus. I've worked with Arrowstreet a lot. Larry specifically, Tina, Dan, Katie is the one who did our high school building. Dan is currently doing our addition. Tina did the addition. So I know all of them very well. And I can't speak highly enough of everything I've ever done with them on any project. So I feel very biased towards that work. Again, every project has been very controlled from a cost perspective, very thoughtful from a design perspective. They've moved very quickly within the charter school landscape, which they are widely known for. They've done many, many charter schools. It is, tight timelines, tight turnarounds, but from a construction standpoint, a move-in standpoint, all these things, and they manage all of that very, very well. So I have zero concerns with their ability to move on a very tight timeline. I assume they can probably move quicker than we can move, based upon what I've seen them do. I think they are a great team. MDM, I liked the fact that MDM had context within the traffic folks, which is a big concern in the town, has already a lot of data on the area and their ability to utilize that historical data to kind of push the project forward. I really liked. MDM's a very well-known firm, does a lot of work. So that's great. Obviously, the educational planner was the same for both. So that seemed like just, you know, obviously a wash and a push. You know, they had some similar ideas around designs for early bid packages, which I think is pretty similar. You know, trying to get a potentially a CM at risk project or something like that to inform the designs. Things we talked about. I thought the designs they provided were very attractive and like provided a little more options for than kind of what the other one did. Obviously, the other one was trying to fit a pre-existing, and they had the benefit of a gorgeous Revit model, like walking through a physical space, which, you know, just timing wise works out really well for them. Yeah, I think Arrowstreet is a phenomenal firm, so think very highly of them. For RDA, I have no experience with them, although I work with Warner Larson on projects, and they're a very well-respected firm. They're very good at exterior space. So David is terrific. I thought from a discussion of like the energy efficient and net zero, I liked Arrowstreet. I thought Arrowstreet spoke better to that than RDA, and just like spoke with more confidence and expertise and dove into that a bit more. So that was one. The in-house construction manager for RDA I thought was interesting, and that's not something I've necessarily heard from a lot of firms. So I was interested in that. I really liked their CA guy. I wish he spoke a lot more in the presentation. One thing I was concerned about is Gene, the like masthead architect, essentially ran the whole project. And while Larry is extremely hands-on in projects, I know that is not typically the person who is like driving most projects. So I guess I was just slightly concerned that he was essentially the only architect kind of speaking, and no other member of the team was really stepping up. So that was just a slight concern I had. I loved some of the ideas they had, with like multi-purchase stage, the terrace, all these things, like those were very good. The fact that they have lots of current capacity, as they said, they like have no other competing projects and they have the time to put this in. They obviously have tremendous experience. So their qualifications probably don't seem to be questioned. Those were my initial thoughts.
All right.
Perfect.
Sorry.
No, thanks for keeping them short. That was really good.
Yeah. Scott, you're up.
So let's see. I really struggled to find anything negative about what Arrowstreet presented. I thought their experience was really good in the middle school level and the pre-K. I thought the schedule outline and the estimating they put up was really clear and easy to read, and really, I think, was it 2027 for an end date was pretty attractive and didn't seem unreasonable. When it came to kind of had the same comment as far as sustainability and net zero. So RDA was still talking about it as sustainability, and Arrowstreet talks about just net zero. They're already moved beyond kind of the mainstream. They definitely seem like a leader in that area as compared to a laggard or someone doing it because it's required. Educational planner is the same on both. So that's kind of one of the questions we were talking about asking was, who do you want to work for? But might not have been appropriate in front of the rest of the group. They overall, I just felt like they seemed a little bit more passionate about what they do, especially on the sustainability and the transportation side, and the landscape. When it came to laying out the buildings, I liked how they walked us through their process, throwing the bubble diagrams up and how did that flow into a layout for the floors. And I liked the different options they came up with, some more than others, but I thought they were all workable and had some really nice elements that we haven't really seen up to this point from previous adventures here. So I liked how they addressed community engagement and how they were going to to really put that in the forefront. I'm not sure if RDA really addressed that as much. I think they probably did, but not as a specific topic. I liked how Arrowstreet was not stuck in an MSBA process. Like you could tell they work in multiple forums. So they're not, well, this is what MSBA says, so this is the way we do things. RDA seemed the same, but maybe not to the same level. I like the CA guy for RDA as well, but I also like how Arrowstreet shares that across all the disciplines. So it's not just one person doing it. So they're pulling the full team into it and not just relying on one person to fill that role. Budget wise, they seem to both say they could achieve what we needed with the budget we had. So I think that's a push.
The same line, right? The same reach.
Yeah,
so they can get us to the same point.
Yeah, basically through schematic design and the start of permitting right around where we're at a town meeting is the way I read that. So some other comments on RDA. For them, there were some on the cost side was very interesting. Their metrics on change orders on projects were fantastic. So that's really nice to see and understand that they've had success repeatedly keeping the budget and not going over it. And I'm really kind of, a teetering point for me is repeating the Hingham School. Does that really work or not? And if it does, how much time and money can that save us? But that's purely looking at it, not from an educational standpoint, but just time and money. So that's the one thing that would push me over the edge for RDA over Arrowstreet. If we knew for sure that was a dead fit and could go, but it's hard to know that today in this meeting. So they grew on me throughout the interview process, I would say too. Like they started off kind of nervous and not quite fluid, but once they got into the model and talking about what they do, they got much better. And I thought they actually explained what they did better there than through the presentation process, because it was just kind of walking through the model and they just talked about what they did. So I thought that was really well done. Scheduling wise, I think their duration seemed pretty good. I was surprised. I thought there would be more of a savings on the design duration with non-MSBA approach. They were at 11 months versus 19 versus 11 to 16. I thought there'd be more savings there. So that I was a little surprised at. Let's see if I have any other notes here. No, I thought it was advantageous that you can genuinely see they would like to do this project. They said they had the capacity, which is great, but you could see it. It's something it's not just another job that they were proposing on. It seems like they have a lot of interest in doing it for us.
Dr. Miranda.
So, but that would be too much, but I was definitely taken by Arrowstreet's presentation more so than RDA. I appreciated, there were a lot of people, but I did appreciate sort of all the various perspectives and how they were feeding off of each other. I think we've heard more of the voices of the team that's going to be engaged. I have to say that I appreciated the diversity, both in terms of gender and otherwise, of the team. I thought that was very obvious. And definitely I have experience with Arrowstreet, not on a school, so very different. And I did find them very responsible in terms of trying to stay on budget. So I did find, I've worked well with them in that sense. In terms of the net zero, I also thought that they made a very compelling case as to why this is just the way we do things and not so much from the sustainability perspective as well. So I like the way they spoke to that. It seems like something that they've mastered and they know how to do well. I like their designs a lot. I felt like it wasn't sort of trying to fit us into something that is, but really helping us think of what would work better. And I even like the layout of the way it looked like based on sort of what we have to work with versus the RDA model that we looked at, the template that they showed us. Well, it did become more attractive as they were walking us through the process. It did get a little busy. But it was good to see sort of the potential of creative use of space and also the flexibility. But then I wonder if some of that thinking we could bring to any other design, and that we should think about that. I think as we look at the layout of the school. And let's see what else. I think the community engagement process also stood out for me in terms of Arrowstreet versus RDA. They kind of mentioned it, but they didn't go into as much depth as I would like to. I've heard, I also, I think on the side of Arrowstreet, the fact that they understand sort of our concerns with traffic and transportation, that they have that experience with Milton. I think that's a plus because as we have heard in presentations, that's a huge concern in the town. And so I think, any advantage we can have around that, it is helpful. I'm also familiar with the Brook campus and I've seen that and it's an amazing school. So I feel like I have that sort of experience with them as well. I did like the eagerness of RDA, but I don't necessarily sign as a plus or a negative, because that's just where they are in terms of the volume of work that they have right now. But overall, for me, Arrowstreet was more.
Carrie?
I feel very similarly to everybody that's gone before me. I liked Arrowstreet a lot. I liked Arrowstreet when we first reviewed the bid packages, quite frankly. They're focused on net zero and sustainability. It's been something that I've been kind of passionate since I started this a long time ago, even before school building committee with the facilities advisory committee. So that obviously boded well for me. I loved the landscape architect that Arrowstreet brought. I thought her passion for what we have out there to work with was she really had the energy for it. And I think it's going to be a big part of how we sell that to the neighbors, quite frankly, is how we use that and how we treat it with respect. And I also like the familiarity of the traffic group. Obviously they have the familiarity. We're going to need that. We were just kind of spinning off afterwards, just saying like, not only do you have the schools that you're contending with, but also 40B traffic that's going to be, I have a strong sense that they probably are involved in that. So having that knowledge base, I think is really important. They made a quick comment, people who start on the project and the project. For me, that consistency I'm glad that they highlighted that. I think it's important. I also made a note, aware and conscious of civic engagement and budget. They actually said those two words together, which I was like, brilliant. And they finished their whole presentation on the civic and community engagement piece, which I thought was great. And I just like the team. They were very well prepared. They were cued, very well. They all probably could have jumped in. I liked the educational planner gentleman. I think he did a good job of differentiating himself in each presentation, which I thought was good. It just tells that he knows how to work with both groups really well. And that's what I had for Arrowstreet. And then RDA, they bring value, speed, talent. I mean, all of those are really good things. Oh, one thing that I did, Arrowstreet mentioned our strategic plan, which I thought was kind of key. Because that's kind of how the project should start. They should understand our strategic plan. And then for RDA, fully available for the project was my note. Sometimes that worries me, doesn't make me feel terribly great, actually. I did like the construction management side being a part of the team. Let's see. I just see fast track, so that's a good highlight as well.
Yep.
They seemed very much to focus on the fact that they're South Shore located, which I think we had all talked about. That's a good thing, proximity. But overall, I have to say, from start to finish, it's an Arrowstreet for me.
Our resident architect, take it away.
I'm not technical doing, I don't want to.
Mhm.
I want to keep things simple and try to be brief and say what really impressed me.
Yep.
Presentation aside, I believe Arrowstreet is a better design firm. They've been doing it longer, they're more experienced, their designs are definitely, I mean, you saw the RDA is very conservative in their design approach. And I didn't like that they assumed we would want to be conservative, when you play the building. I will say, you guys probably know this, 80% of this project is construction administration. It really bothered me at Arrowstreet. I hear what you're saying. I thought they were really the answer to that. I think they didn't really have an answer, so we kind of started spreading the wealth around. I don't think they really had thought about it, which definitely bothered me because I'm not worried about it. If we go with them, I think they'll be fine. But I just, as an ex-CA guy, it kind of bothered me that, some architectural firms, as they know, CA is an afterthought. And that's not the firm you want to work with. And you want to make sure it's someone that takes construction administration serious, because that's where we're going to lose money, is during CA. So just something to be careful. I thought Arrowstreet presented really well. I thought, this season, let's be honest, I'm not surprised at all you guys are so impressed by them, because I think they just present well. They're good at what they do. RDA, I agree. I think once they got going, they were fine. And once they got talking about the project, I think they did fine, which I appreciate, because that's how I am. I'm not a good public speaker. I'm a good, let's talk about what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do. And so I kind of appreciated that. I agree. I thought the presentation was definitely dominated by one party, which can be good and bad way. They have leadership. At the same time, you want to be confident in the other people, because you actually made a good point, Carrie. I don't know if you did it accidentally or on purpose, but he's not going to be the guy working on that project. Yeah. Just like I know all 5 of those guys are not going to be doing construction administration on this project. It's going to be one guy that's going to be chasing the rest of the team around for the answers. That's just how it works. So for me, like I said, I think either one of these firms could do this project. I think they definitely have different personalities, and they're going to attack it in a different way. For me, it's what kind of building do we want to do? Do we want to do a model school? If we do, then maybe, RDA's the way to go. I think if we want to design a new building, something different, then even though I really like RDA personally, I've worked with a couple of guys that weren't here tonight that work at the firm that get involved with the project. But I think if we're going to do it, we go with it. I think Arrowstreet's probably the way to go. Like I said, I like the RDA. I thought they did a good presentation. I wasn't real impressed with their designs. I thought they were a little conservative for my taste. I think if we're going to sell this project in Milton, we can't get them another kind of next school. It's not going to work. Right? We have to give them something different, I think, this time. That's all. Thank you.
Right. Dr. Burrows?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo, kind of what has been said, and even coming in as I read through both of the packets, I was leaning Arrowstreet. I thought they were much more cohesive. They were really strategic in terms of talking through the timeline, understanding our context, understanding community engagement in a way that I think is going to be really important. So I think on the kind of the public facing side, I think they're, what you all talked about in terms of your experience with them and their ability to not just be focused on building a building, but engaging and moving everybody forward, which is what we really are going to need in the short term here as we we don't have a long period of or long runway. So that to me alone seems really important. I think the design was just much more appealing, and I didn't feel like I lost anything by not getting a fly through of what they had created. I thought that was pretty appealing in terms of the site, and the idea of having the preschool separate was an interesting idea too. It just kind of seemed more creative, more connected, and the team seemed a little bit more cohesive. And I didn't realize in going through this how many different organizations are part of the package. That we saw one person shared here, the educational designer shared across both, but they just seemed like they were going to be for our needs. It really doesn't seem like a hard decision.
Yeah, I mean, I was also very impressed with Arrowstreet's presentation. Both what they submitted, their response was really stood out more. It was a slicker presentation, and the way that they physically moved as they stood up. Carrie said they queued and they moved, and the presentation could have been led by any of their speakers, right? And that wasn't the case with RDA, but I really appreciated the way that RDA focused a lot on value and efficiency. It seemed to me that the timeline that they presented was February of 27 versus June of 27 in Arrowstreet's presentation, right? Now, whether that, Mark, I think you said earlier, you're not sure what that gets us, right?
I mean, it gets us obviously 4 months, but from a standpoint of move-in ready, right? You're not going to move in. You're not going to use it until September.
And it's the same construction duration, right? Pretty close. Yeah. Like they're taking some time off the design, maybe some time off the construction. We don't know exactly what that's getting us, right? But it's I appreciated that they were focused on that, and they were focused on we have this design. This is going to save us money too. I think the subtext was we can do this thing for less for you. Like, we're not assessing a cost proposal or anything right now, but I think they were saying that both their effort and the results of their effort would cost us less. That's what I was hearing them try to say to us. But that being said, I was very impressed with the Arrowstreet presentation.
I didn't hear that when I asked about the cost. Arrowstreet seemed to have cost really down packed. They seem to just brush it off. Everything will be the same price. As a PM, that's crap for me. You got to tell me why one is more expensive or cheaper. That was one of, if I have to go with one or the other. The people that can say this is $1.50 is much better than the one who says, oh, it's about $2. Just generally, I don't have any experience.
They're wary because tomorrow it could be $1.75, and a week later it could be $2.50.
Yeah, but when you're presenting to me, at least be able to tell me this is the trend. Well, that's just my call. I thought they had very strong leadership, the man that RDA. I thought, just like Carrie mentioned, the other teams seem to have distributed leadership. So if, God forbid, the strong leader is not by a truck and is in the hospital, others can still take up the project. That's how I think. So what risk are we taking on if we're depending on one person that makes all the call? Other than that, I think we have a good situation here. Either team, I believe, would deliver great work. That's it from me.
Do we want to solicit guidance from PMA's assessment of our deliberation?
Let's just keep going.
Okay.
Let's just keep going. I think one thing that I would say, at least for PMA, is I should have caught this when we were sending the information to them, of when you guys came in to do your presentation, there were hard copies left over that kind of referenced during this deliberation. So not that we're gonna do this again, but for you guys, if you're doing it again, maybe in that write-up, tell them, bring hard copies. Yeah, just because some of the references that people were making, it might have helped them a little bit too, but all in all, great. My take is, I'm impressed by both of them. Like I said, it's amazing to see, the opportunity that's going to be there with those type of things. And echoing kind of everything that people said, except for one thing. So the one thing I noted when I was looking at these proposals is RDA is utilizing the existing site civil contract that's already surveyed the entire land. They are intimately familiar. They've walked the site. They've staked the wetlands. They know it. When I was looking at Arrowstreet's presentation of those wetland boundaries, natural habitat boundaries, they looked a lot very exaggerated, as if they didn't come off a map, that it was stuff that they drew in. So that was a big concern for me, for them to get going and get up to speed. There's a lot of site understanding that they're going to have to do. They have the right people for it, but there's a little bit of a learning curve there, where RDA is going to hit the ground. They already hit the ground running. They've got a team that's already been out there, surveyed the site, familiar with the wetlands, familiar with everything going on with it. That was, just from a construction point of view, for me, it was a big differentiator that was there. For me, it gets down to when you scrub the sub consultants that are there. Like we noticed tonight, the educational planner is the same guy, right? MEP, same people, right? I went through the proposals and just kind of highlighted who's who, and it's like 50% it's the same thing. So it gets down to the architects, my take. Beautiful, pretty Arrowstreet. I mean, that's a beautiful, stuff they're doing. RDA's is still beautiful. I was impressed when we walked through the site to actually see inside, call it the box that was there. And not that I think it's boxy, I thought it was nice. That stepped it up a bit for me first, from when I was, Arrowstreet was here for beauty, RDA was here. And as we walked through it, I kind of balanced off a little bit. For me, it's tough to decide, because having a school that's kind of been built a couple times and stuff like that, I think has some efficiencies to it. But Arrowstreet's, schedule that they put up there that I didn't see that was part of their proposal was good. They're saying, we can build this, we can do those options. It's going to be very hard for me to make a decision between the two, to be honest. It was very impressive for both of them. Like I said, I think Arrowstreet would just need a little more time to understand what we're dealing with the site, with the existing wetlands that are out there.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
So since we paid for that and commissioned that, wouldn't we be able to just hand that to anybody?
Correct.
To use?
Yeah, so we'll be able to hand over all that stuff. But they haven't walked the site. Well, they've walked the site. I can't say that because they were out there taking pictures and stuff like that, which is cool. But some of the stuff they had on there, like I said, when I was looking at their the boundaries that they were drawing up for the protected rare species, or endangered species that are there, just from the work we did previously for that, I knew it wasn't as far out as they were showing.
Our traffic consultant on Arrowstreet might be able to tell us where to put the driveway equipment.
But that's, I know it's plus and minuses on all of them. Like the traffic consultant is civil. My favorite thing is, after I reviewed everything, we're not going to go wrong with either of them.
I think that was a great comment.
Yeah. So,
And I'll just do a second plug for the diversity, because I noted it immediately as well.
I think one of the things I'm weighing is, do I believe that RDA can actually deliver cheaper, or maybe that's not the way to, less expensive?
Yep. Thank you.
It's unfortunate we don't have time.
I don't think we want your information.
From a timeline.
Hold on. Yeah.
It is, we don't really have anything other than the idea that transferring a building envelope from somewhere else onto this site and adapting it will
Well, just, there is a program, MSBA does have a program, it's called a model school program, you do just what they're talking about.
Yep.
They just weren't calling it a model school program because it's not an MSBA project, so it is.
So just for context too, is when we put the advertisement out for this request for services, we indicated to them is if you have a model school program that would fit on our site and fit our educational program, please bring that to light. So I think that was partially what RDA potentially could have gone off and designed something on their own, but because we acknowledged that, put that out in our RFS, they probably looked at it and said, hey, because it fits here and present it there. So I don't want to discount them that they couldn't do what Arrowstreet's doing and stuff like that as like a fully custom thing there. So it's just another thing to kind of keep in mind.
What helps when it's just simple diagram that they at least talked about the possibility of a new school. But you're right, they haven't had any.
Yeah.
Redoing the project.
Yep.
It would have been nice to see, okay, we could do this also. I wouldn't have taken that much extra effort. Even when Arrowstreet did, like, it looked great. That's not a highly intensive journey they presented, but they have enough experience to know that this goes here, this goes there, this goes there, and just sounds with it on the site. So
it's a lot more appealing.
Yeah, like I said, it's a matter of which direction each person voting wants to go in. I personally, I think there's a huge benefit to the model school type project for the town. I'm thinking about selling this to Milton. And that we have to be strategic about how we're going to sell this project, about how we're going to present it, and how it's not only going to benefit the town, but how it's going to be, not hurt the town as far as resources. So, but that's where I'm going, I guess.
So if people could just raise their hand, just so we're not all talking over each other and stuff like that. Appreciate it.
I'm thinking, what's the next big step in fulfilling this project? Since either of them would, let's do, in my opinion, equal work. We will need to communicate to the rest of the town. I think Arrowstreet presented a better capacity to do that. I'm not sure that RDA cannot do it. Maybe they just didn't speak to it, right? It would have been nice if they said the model school could save us money. I think they implied it, but they just didn't say it, right? Because one of the things that could stop the project is when we go to the override. Is it an $80 million project or $120 million? At that point, it doesn't matter what the design is. Everybody's thinking, how much more will my taxes go? Right. So if we think of it that far ahead, who will help us communicate the right information and how can we reduce the total cost? That's it. I don't have an answer. I'm just thinking those are the questions.
Mark and then Carrie.
I mean, to the point of like, what is the advantage of the model school building, right? Which I think I completely agree with you. Like that to me would be the most compelling thing about going with RDA. Like we can say X amount and X amount of months, but from like their own timeline. And I think I'd love the handout to be able to read the timelines next to each other. So I'm just going off memory, but like essentially a February versus a June. And I feel like the June was a more conservative construction timeline than the February. So like that's your at best case scenario from what RDA is presenting. It's saying like a 4-month advantage to going with their model school, which to me is not a significant advantage. There's going to be some escalation over 4 months. It's not going to be significant. There's not going to be any advantage programming wise for the school, or not a significant advantage programming wise, I believe, for the school to get those 4 months back if that is actually realized. And so, and to your point, Aqua too, like they didn't love for them to say like this building cost us X amount in Hingham. Like we think we can do this. Like again, I do think the advantage they tried to name was they have the numbers on this, and that's the thing that Arrowstreet's not going to have with any of their design as well. Right, they both have PMNC consulting, and so they'll get that cost estimate, but we will have much harder numbers with RDA.
Carrie was next, then Scott.
I was just going to point out that Arrowstreet really focused on how the sustainability initiatives could drive down the cost of construction. I thought it was just a really good carrot for me to achieve two things that I think should be important for Milton is the sustainability and also cost. Just throwing that out there as an offset to a model school. Where it's not very original.
Scott?
Just a couple of, one question for PMA. The cost of Hingham compared to other schools that you've seen, how does it compare cost per square foot? Is it in the same, is it, you know, in the average? Is it on the high side, low side?
It's in the average. The curve, there's definitely projects higher and there's definitely projects lower.
Okay.
We did come in at bid time under estimate, which allowed us to take the geothermal wells as an alternate. So the cost projections were accurate. We did not bust anything. So
part of why the average, I think part of stuff that drove the average up was the pre-K wing. A lot of the pre-K space in the MSBA model is not reimbursable because it'd be like a district office. But admin space is capped at a certain percentage. If you need extra for pre-K, the MSBA won't reimburse it. So it kind of jumped the average up versus just a straight K-5.
Okay. I was asking just to make sure there wasn't an outlier in either direction. So it's kind of on the average. The you know, as I think about that more, you know, a model school could go sideways on us too. Like what if it doesn't work? Then where's RDA left, like starting from scratch with trying to figure out a whole new program? Then I think when you, at least in my experience, whenever selecting, whether it's an engineer, an architect, or a CM, whatever it is, or even a trades contractor, we always end up going back to the same thing, which is the team that you choose is who's going to drive it home for you. You choose the right team, they're going to bring you the best cost, and they're going to bring you the best quality and the best school or whatever you're building. So ultimately, I think that's what I'll base my decision on is, you know, the team that I think will best deliver the project, because that will bring us the most savings, no matter whether we go model school or not, because Arrowstreet might come out in week 2 and say, hey, we have 1, 2. How about this one?
Just to be clear too, model school, new school, the cost of construction is probably going to be the same.
Yeah.
You're saving money on general conditions. That's what that 4 months, that's what that means. You're saving 4 months of general conditions. So yeah, is it savings? Yes. Is it a significant savings? Probably not. I mean, the building's going to cost what it costs. And that building, I like that building. It was not a efficient building. It wasn't a cheap building. That, you know, that patio we showed, that looked great, very expensive. You know, those little things like that, we're not saving money. So I expect, as I was watching that, I was thinking if we would value engineer out from this, that we use it as a model school. So just as far as cost, I think we're going to square footage cost is going to be what it is, either way you go.
I think we have to do that with both of them. I mean, you know, with what Arrowstreet presents, when you have a separate building, you're, you know, for the pre-K, that adds cost by having a separate building too. So there's, like I said, I think it's going to come down to the team that we think can best deliver the project for us, and we'll have the most successful with the best team.
Okay.
It's minus one.
No, Mike is not on. Otherwise, he would have been raising his hand and doing a bunch of stuff. So I think at this point, probably the way to do it rather than individual vote, just is for someone to make a motion for who they would prefer to nominate, have it second, and then we can just vote that up or down. And if that passes, right, that would be the vote for what we're doing for it. Easy enough.
Okay, I'll make a motion, add the brief to it, all the other thing, to elect what is it called? Arrowstreet as the architect for this project.
Okay, any other discussion? Beat a dead horse, we're good. Okay, all right. So I believe with this, because Mike is now not remote anymore, We can just do raising hand, or we go individually. I think just make it easier because we already did a roll call. Just do a roll call just to be safe.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, a yes vote is for Arrowstreet. A no vote is essentially for RDA. All right. Mark.
Yes.
Scott Tereshak.
Yes.
Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Terry Gurley.
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman.
Yes.
Dr. Burrows.
He said yes.
You can abstain if you like.
I'd like to abstain.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Tim Lombard.
Yes.
Aqua.
I can't abstain because I made the motion.
So it's a yes and no. And
I'm trying.
yeah, I am a yes too. So yeah, Arrowstreet it is.
Make mine a yes, I make the paperwork easier.
So revoting.
I'll pull my abstention.
Okay.
So unanimous.
Okay. All right. So item 7 on our agenda is future meeting dates, which is essentially to be determined right now. I think, as everyone's aware, we've got the townwide vote coming up Wednesday now, not tomorrow, because it's been pushed back a day. Yep, they pushed it back a day because of the snow. The recommendation that we just, so the recommendation we just voted on has to get presented to the select board for essentially finalizing it all. So it's our recommendation to the select board. After that point, we'll enter into negotiations and, similar for what we did with their PMA as our OPM on board, Arrowstreet, assuming the select board, recommends it and we can come to a contractual agreement.
What's the timeline for that, the select board,
I believe the next meeting for them is 27th, so the end of the month. They may call a special meeting depending on this vote. I'm not sure. So if they do, I'll try to jump on that agenda to get this going quicker. In the event that we can't come to a contractual agreement, we would then defer to RDA as our backup.
Yeah.
That would be there. The reason I'm saying all this is probably, as you saw from the presentations, like probably the end of this month, June, July, we're going to be meeting every 2 weeks. You know what I mean? This is going to be the ramp up to really dive into, tap everybody's knowledge for construction, education, architecture, everything all the way through. So it's going to, my guess is, once we get them on board, every 2 weeks we'll be meeting, if that works. Cool. So our next meeting date I think it would probably be good to meet on the 26th, if that works, 2 weeks from tonight. And again, I don't anticipate the select board meeting before the 27th, but if they do, but I think, regrouping one more time and, prepping to get ready for meeting with the architects and stuff like that going. So if that works for everybody, I'll pencil that in and put it forward.
6 or 7? 6?
Right.
26.
No, 6 p.m. or 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
High school.
Yep.
Just going to show them before you 8 o'clock meetings for the baseball season.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Location to be determined. I'll actually, if you guys want to discuss it now, because we're all here, for the most part, does a room like this work better, or does the high school auditorium work better? Not the auditorium.
If you're gonna need to invite anybody, I think the bigger room would be better.
Yep.
Quite frankly.
Yep.
And it seems like we're gonna have no lack of people joining us going forward. So
Yep.
I think the bigger forum would be.
The high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
It is then. Okay, so on the 26th at the high school, and then we'll touch base with the high school staff, whether it's Glenn or Charlene, to just kind of see if they can hold that for us on Monday nights every 2 weeks.
Thank you.
All right. Item 8.
But I move the motion. What motion, Ron? The motion to dissolve, to adjourn, thank you, not to dissolve.
No. We're not at topic.
I just got here.
Then dissolve it and give it to you. No, adjourn.
Motion's been made,
Motion been made to adjourn.
seconded by Glenn. All right, another quick roll call vote one more time. Mark
Yes.
Loring, Scott
Yes.
Herishak,
Yes.
Selena Miranda,
Yes.
Carrie Hurley, Glenn Hoffman, Tim Lombard.
More enthusiastic, yes.
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 Sean O'Rourke, yes. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
great
you,
night.
Sean.
Yep.